Dāmas un kungi, esiet sveicināti gan šeit klātienē Fantodromā, gan visi tiešraides skatītāji, lai kur jūs būtu. Tā skaitā sveiciens arī visiem tiem, kas mums šobrīd vēro Delfi platformā. Patiešām ilgi gaidīts notikums, par kur runāja arī, vismaz pieminēja arī šī rīta ziņās televīzijā, rāda portālā Delfi, un nevelti šāds vēriens un tik liela uzmanība šim ACDC Tech formam, ko organizē sadales tīkls, jo tēmas, kas šodien tiek apspriestas, ietekmē pilnīgi mūs visus. Pirmajā fóruma daļā dzirdējām ļoti daudz aizraujošas prezentācijas un ievadu stāstus, tā skaitā par klimatu pārmaiņām, par to, kā elektrificēt, kā ekonomiku, tieši kā ekonomikai pelnīt uz potenciālās elektroenerģijas, ko mēs varam saražot. Uzdevām jautājumu, kur tad beigās likt šo enerģiju, kas ir saražot, runājām, un pie mums viesojās arī starptautiski viesi uz skatuves, tā skaitā akcentējot pārrobežu sadarbības starp sadales operatoriem. Un, protams, arī beigās jau iesildījām paneļa diskusiju formātu ar pirmo paneļa diskusiju par to, kas mūs sagaida X stundā. Protams, cerams, ka tāda nekad nepienāks, taču atziņa no šī bija, ka sadarbībā ir spēks un ka īstie dienesti darbojās un gatavojās tam, lai mēs būtu drošībā un mums būtu elektroenerģija jebkādos apstākļos. Mēs turpinām ACDC Tech, un šī ir otrā noslēdzošā fóruma daļa, kur mums priekšā ir 3 aizraujošas paneļa diskusijas, no kurām pirmā no tām ir šeit man aiz muguras, ja mūsu dalībnieki ir sasēdušies. Tas savā ziņā būs kā tāds turpinājums, iespējams pat Latvijas bankas pārstāva ieskicētajai prezentācijai, runāsiet par daudz dažādām plašām tēmām, bet ar šo paneļa diskusiju man palīdzēs un vēlos stādīt jums priekšā SEB bankas valdes locekli un risku direktoru Kārli Daneviču. Kārli, sveiks!
Sveiki!
Tālāk blakus Kārlim Līga Rozentāla, klimata un enerģētikas ministrijas valsts sekretāra vietniece. Sveicināti!
Labdien!
Tālāk Kaspars Cikmačs, Latvenergo valdes loceklis un attīstības direktors. Sveicieni!
Labdien!
Olga Bogdanova, Pasaules enerģijas padomes Latvijas Nacionālās komitejas prezidents. Sveicieni!
Labdien!
Un visbeidzot Edvards Kušners, Latvijas bankas ilgtspējas virziena vadītājs. Sveicam uz skatuves!
Labdien!
Lūdzu, dāmas un kungi, skatuvi jūsu rīcībā.
Paldies! Liels paldies organizētājiem par ielūgumu moderēt šo pasākumu. Es, dodoties šurp, es domāju, ar ko man tas gods, jo parasti baņķieri tā kā ir pēdējā vietā. Vispirms ir jāizdomā, kāda ir stratēģija enerģētikas jomā, jāatrod tie pareizie projekti, un tā pašās beigās bankas vai nu finansē, vai nu nefinansē. Bet jā, ar 20 gadu pieredzi finanšu nozarē, man tas gods arī no savas puses teikt, kad man bija tas gods SEB bankai izstrādāt enerģētikas finansēšanas stratēģiju un veiksmīgi izvairīties no OIK projektiem. Un kā riska direktoram tas man vienmēr ir tāds galvenais strateģiskais mērķis, mēģināt saprast, kas ir tie izaicinājumi nākotnē, kas ir tie nākamie potenciālie OIKi, kas kaut kādā brīdī varbūt liekas laba ideja, bet paskatoties ar distances nogriezni, paskatoties pēc kāda laika, mēs redzam, ka tur ir bijis kaut kāds strupceļš, tur ir bijušas kaut kādas izvēles, kas nav bijušas sabiedrības interesēs, un beigās tas, protams, nenāk pa labu nevienam. Tā kā mums tāds nedaudz negatīvs paneļa ievirziens, mēģināt meklēt strupceļus, bet mēs mēģināsim to dzīvelīgi diskutēt un mēģināsim pozitīvi saprast, kā mēs kā valsts un sabiedrība mācamies un kā mēs lietas organizējam gudrāk. Bet vispirms varbūt sāksim ar tevi, Līga. Kas tie strupceļi varētu būt, ja mēs skatāmies nākotnē? Daži jau izskanēja, protams, iepriekšējās pasākuma diskusijās, bet varbūt kaut kas no mūsu puses, kas ir tie galvenie iespējamie strupceļi?
Jāsaka, ka drīzāk būtu jārunā nevis par strupceļiem, bet par izaicinājumiem. Un tie izaicinājumi, protams, ir atrast balansu elektroenerģijas ražošanā, gan tiešā, gan pārnestā nozīmē. Gan tādā izpratnē, kā sabalansēt to elektroenerģijas ražošanu, ko tad mēs izvēlamies – sauli, vēju, vēl kādu citu elektroenerģijas ražošanas veidu, un tad tajā arī fizikālajā izpratnē sabalansēt kā tos AR-us, atjaunojamo energoresursu elektroenerģijas ražošanu, izbalansēt, zinot, ka tā tomēr ir tāda vārīga, svārstīga, saulīte pa dienu spīd, naktī nespīd, vējš kaut kad puš, kaut kad nepūš, ūdens pietece Daugavā kaut kad ir labāka, kaut kad sliktāka. Līdz ar to tas galvenais izaicinājums noteikti ir balans un noteikti atrast politikas veidotājiem arī šo līdzsvaru, cik tālu mēs attīstam tīklus, kur mēs attīstam tīklus, lai mēs nenonākam pie situācijas, kur mēs veidojam tā saucamās elektrificētās pļavas, kur mums otrā galā nemaz nav tā elektroenerģijas ražošanas objekta, kur tikai ir tā doma, ka tur kāds komersants vēlējās būvēt, bet nesanāca, investori pazuda, vēl kādas problēmas radās. Tā rezultātā ir tas tīkls izveidots, kurš tam maksā par tīklu, faktiski katrs gala lietotājs ar to sadals un pārvades tarifu savā rēķinā. Un, līdz ar to, jebkurā no šīm rīcībām, faktiski pats galvenais ir tas balans.
Super, man liekas, tieši tā nav melns un balts, un par to balansu es tā arī pēc sevis domāju. Es esmu pilnībā elektrizējies, braucu ar elektromašīnu, esmu uzstādījis solāros paneļus, bet skats, ka tas balanss nav, ka tagad saulīt spīd ārā un šobrīd ražojās tur 4 vai 5 kilovati. Šodien man sakrāsies droši vien kādi 30-40 kilovati, kad es viņus patērēšu ar siltumsūkņiem ziemā. Elektroauto vairumā gadījumu, protams, stāv, bet tā, kad tu viņu lādē, tad vienā brīdī pat 50 kilovatu uzreiz jauda. Tā kā vienas mājsaimniecības kontekstā, protams, to balansu nav iespējams atrast, un tas ir tad plašāks izaicinājums absolūti. Un arī kā finansists un baņķieris man ļoti patīk, tu pieminēji tās pļavu projektus, jo faktiski finanšu nozarē viena no skaidrām burbuļu pazīmēm ir, kad cilvēki, ļoti bieži juristi, bez pieredzes konkrētā nozarē, sāk attīstīt konkrētās nozares projektus. Un šobrīd droši vien tas ir ar kaut kāds iespējams strupceļš, kur mēs redzam, kur cilvēki bez enerģētikas pieredzes, bez elektrības tādu pašpatēriņu sāk zaļās pļavās liels projekts attīstīt. Tā kā mēs kā finanšu sektors noteikti ar to redzam ar bažām.
Jā, ja drīkst piebilst, tad faktiski, piemēram, pagājušajā gadā, tad tā vēl bija ekonomikas ministrija, tagad jau tā ir klimata un enerģētikas ministrija izsniedza atļaujas elektroenerģijas ražošanas uzsākšanai 1000 atļaujas. Un, ja mēs skatāmies, ka tādi kārtīgi lieli parki ir virs 50 megavatiem, tad mēs izsniedzām 53 šādas atļaujas ļoti lielajiem parkiem. Un no tām 52 bija saules parkiem. Tātad tikai viens vēja parkam un 52 saules parkiem šādiem milzīgiem. Šobrīd pie pārvades tīkla nav pieslēgts vēl neviens saules parks.
Tieši tā. Un tas vispār no sabiedrības viedokļa, tur, kur kaut kāda sabiedrības daļa domā, ka varēs dzīvot līdz mūža beigām laimīgi, tāpēc, ka kaut kas būs attīstīts un naudiņa ripos pat par sevi un nevajadzēs strādāt, tad tas parasti ir tāds burbulīgs, neveselīgas attīstības pazīmes. Paldies, Līga, ka tu ieskicēji to. Kaspar, no tavas puses, tu esi enerģētikā jau daudz gadus, tu arī no finanšu nozares vēsturiski, esi no tehnoloģiju nozares. Es
domāju, ka tur izaicinājums ir tas, enerģētika pēc būtības ir ilgtermiņa biznesa. Jo katrs no tiem projektiem enerģētikā ir ar 20-30 gadu bieži vien dzīves ciklu. Bet mēs redzam, ka lēmumus pēdējā gadā daudz pieņemas ļoti īstermiņa informāciju. Piemēram, mēs zinām, ka pagājušajā gadā elektrības cenas bija daudzreiz lielākas, 10 reižu vairāk nekā parasti. Ātri parādījās daudz vairāk projektu, varbūt nekā gribēja. Ministri izdarīja labu darbu, atviegloja saules paneļu parku uzstādīšanu, bet paralēli arī bija lielākas cenas, un tas notikās daudz straujāk nekā plānoja. Ja mēs skatītos īstermiņu, tad, piemēram, šogad mēs vienbrīd runājam, ka mums ir varbūt tās Latvijā enerģijas iztrūkums, bet no otras puses, ja mēs pastamies īstermiņā, tad šogad no 1. janvāra līdz vakardienai mēs bijām eksportētāji. Vairāk kā 30% no Latvijā saražotās enerģijas mēs eksportējām uz kaimiņiem. Bet, protams, nevar skatīties tikai 5. Tūlītās ūdens ir tieši beidzies, un atlikušos 7 mēnešus visdrīzāk mēs būsim lielā importētāja pozīcijā, jo ūdens nav. Un pat šajos 4 mēnešos Baltija kopumā bija importētāja pozīcijā diezgan spēcīga un nepārtraukti. Līdz ar to jauna enerģijas avota mums nepietiek. Bet stāsts ir par saules paneļiem. Principā tādā mūsu skatījumā ir skaidrs, ka tas, ko Līga jau sāk pieminēt par izsniegtajām atļaujām, mēs redzam austrieguma tīkla un sadales tīkla samaksātās rezervācijas maksas, kuri vairāk kā pie 3 gigavatiem, tas 3 vairāk nekā Latvijas patēriņš. Skatoties Lietuvu, mēs redzam 4600 megavati ir izsniegtās atļaujas, par kurām iemaksātas rezervācijas, kaut kas līdzīgs Igaunijā. Tātad kopējie saules projekti, par kuriem investori jau veic reālu finanšu ieguldījumu, varbūt salīdzīt procentā nelielu, bet tomēr tie daudzi 10 miljoni. Ir jau noticis un virzās. Tagad ir mainījušās elektrības cenas prognozes, redzēs, kā tas virziesies tālāk. kuri būs ilgtermiņa spēlētāji, kur nebūs.
Okay, Kaspar, bet bišķiņ pakavēsimies pie tevis. Es pilnīgi piekrītu Līgai par to balansu, bet vai nav tā, ka to jauno balansu meklējot, mums būs jaudu pārpalikums? Tā, kad spīd saulīte, tad ideālā gadījumā mēs ar visiem solāriem paneļiem noseksim visu Latvijas patēriņu. Tad, kad pūš vējš, tad mēs ideālā gadījumā ar vēju noseksim visu Latvijas patēriņu. Tad, kad nespīd saule un nepūš vējš, tad cerams mums būs sakrājies ūdens vai mums būs kaut kādas citas bāzes jaudas jāieslēdz. Tā kā tas jaudu pārpalikums jau pēc definīcijas būs.
Mēs to redzam. Viņš pilnīgi noteikti savā ziņā varētu teikt, ka būs vairāk nekā ir tagadējais patēriņš. Mēs redzējām Lieldienu brīvdienās tepat netālu Čehijā, kur 400 megawatu saules parkus atslēdza tikai tāpēc, ka nebija kur likt, nebija ne paštēriņš, nebija kur novadīt uz ārzemēm. Mēs redzam jau, kuros svētdienu pēc kārtas, ka elektrības cenas kritušās, un iespējams, laikam tieši tagad un iepriekšējā stunda elektrības cena ir 4 eiro pa megawatu stundu, ir super zema, arī iespējams ļoti līdzīgi iemeslu dēļ. Tā kā tas jau ir atnācis, un tie projekti vēl tikai būvējās. Mēs redzam pļavas, kurās uzstāv mums pašiem arī ir projekti, kuros mēs būvējam, viņi vēl būs. Tā kā atnāks pie tā, bet tā ir ļoti laba ziņa patērētājiem. Nozīmē, patērētājiem būs daudz stundas, ka būs ļoti zema cena. Un tas arī ir laba ziņa uzņēmējiem, kuriem cerams radīsies idejas, kā tad izmantot šo lēto enerģiju, radīt jaunus produktus, varbūt tās arī baterijas biznesa case parādīsies. Es domāju, pārāk daudz enerģija, tā varbūt ir problēma kādam attīstītājam, kurš to nav ņēmis vērā savos biznesa plānos, bet kā sabiedrībai kopumā, es domāju, daudz zaļa enerģija, tas ir laba lieta, tikai gan jau biznesa nolīmeņos un izdomāsim.
Jautājums, kurš par to maksā?
Es gribēju pastāstīt pat tālāk. Mēs arī, kā Latvijas Energo pētam arī dažādus nākotnes projektus, piemēram, zaļu ūdeņradi diezgan nopietni attīstām. Mums arī ir ambīcijas par pilotprojektiem un ražot, lai gan paši patērētu, gan arī tirgotu. Un pēc mūsu modeļiem pat šie 3000 izsniegtās atļaujas vai 4000 Lietuvā ir pamaz, lai reāli tā labi ražot ūdeņradi. Tā kā līdz ar to vajadzētu vēl.
Okay. Labi, patēriņam mēs vēl pieskarsimies, bet varbūt vēl tev papildus jautājums, Kaspar, par cenu. Jo, ko mēs kā finansētāji redzam, kad atkal, tas man ļoti uztrauc, ir uzņēmēji, kas saka, neviena birža, neviena pazīme, neviens eksperts neprognozē, kad cena būs ilgtermiņā zemāka kā, piemēram, 8 centi par kilovatstundu. Tas sanāk, vai ne? Piemēram, šādu apgalvojumu kāds izsaka. Un tad man liekas, vai nebūs tā, ka ziemā būs 1 eiro un vasarā būs 0, un tad veidosies kaut kāda vidējā cena, vai cik viņi būs homogēni. Un cilvēki, teiksim, ieguldot vai domājot par ieguldīšanu šai nozarē, ļoti rēķinās ar kaut kādu abstraktu vidējo cenu, bet to vidējo cenu jau tu nesaņem kā solārā paneļa.
Tieši tā. Es gribēju teikt, ka vismaz tos pētījumus, ko es lasīju visu šo gadu, arī pēdējo, es neredzēju virs 8 un tā tālāk saules parkiem. Tā kā, ir nozares eksperti, kuri konkrētu lietu, tāpēc ir svarīgi, iespējams, katrā lietā juristi eksperti un kāds savā. Skaidrs, ka saucās profilētā cena, ka tajās stundās, kad ir saulē ir sava profilētā cena. Bet no kopējās enerģētikas jāsaprot, ka saules paneļa efektivitāte ir tikai 11%. Turpretī vējam ir tuvu pie 40, jūras atkrastes vējam pie 50 un citiem vairāk. Līdz ar to tas tikai viena no tehnoloģijām, kas mums palīdz, un tās stundas jau nebūs tik daudz arī nemazām. Okay. Mēs zinām, pilnīgi garantēti naktīs saules paneļi nestrādā.
Nē, es to saprotu. Tu liecies tāds pats sašutis, kad tādas muļķīgas, diletantiskas lietas var spriest, bet atkal tā biznesa realitāte bieži ir, ka mēs visi lecām sapardu projektos un attīstījām viesumājas, no kurām puse ir tukšas, pēc tam mēs visi lecām attīstījām oiku projektus, no kuriem 70–80% ir tukši. Tad tas jautājums, vai mēs tiešām esam tagad fundamentāli gudrāki, vai atkal būs lietas, kurās mēs leksim, ko mēs attīstīsim un kas pēc tam tā kā sabiedrības interesēm nekalpos.
Tas savziņā ir tirgus ekonomika, kad viņi izlīmeņos.
Jā, bet cerams, ka ne pārāk destruktīvi. Paldies, Kaspar. Olga, no tavas puses, tu pārstāv tādu starptautisku skatu, un te jau izskanēja salīdzinājumu ar Čehiju, bet varbūt tavs skats par Latviju, un kas ir tie strupceļi, un varbūt no tavas starptautiskās pieredzes, kas ir tie starptautiskie strupceļi, tie grābekļi, kur citu uzkāpja.
Jā, pirmām kārtām es teiktu, šis jautājums ir jāsadala divās daļās. Viens ir faktori, kas stimulē transformāciju, un otrs ir šķēršļi. Jo, kā Pasaules enerģijas padome ir vērtējusi dažādus scenārijus, kā kurš tur scenārijs liek kādu akcentu uz kuru no tehnoloģijām, bet visiem ir skaidrs, ka business as usual, ja mēs strādāsim tā, kā mēs šobrīd darām, pēc būtības arī neļaus mums sasniegt tos ambiciozus mērķus, kādus mēs paši esam nosprauguši. Tas nozīmē, ka diezgan daudz aktivitāšu ir nepieciešams gan no politikas veidotājiem, gan no tirgus dalībniekiem, gan arī no patērētājiem. Tas ir viens, un ja mēs nespēsim aktivizēt visus dalībniekus, tad mums ir jāsamierinās ar to, ka mums veidosies plaisa starp mūsu iecerēm un faktisku rīcību. Par tiem motivējušiem, pēc būtības droši vien nav nevienam noslēpums, ka 3 pamata virzieni ir tie, kas nodrošina vislielāku progresu. Tie ir energoefektivitāte, digitalizācija un dekarbonizācija, jeb elektroenerģijas ģenerācijas pārvēršana no fosīliem uz atjaunojumiem. Bet papildus ļoti būtiski ir tādi inovatīvi instrumenti kā ūdeņraža, elektrolīzes plašāka piemērošana, patēriņa reakcija. Man arī ir prieks, ka šajā konferencē ir atsevišķi pat diskusija elastības jautājumiem ir veltīta. Un pēc būtības, jā, tad ir tehnoloģijām un digitalizācija ir jānāk palīgā. Un īstenībā arī investīcijiem ir milzīga nozīme šajā procesā, jo skaidrs, ka valoda ir tas, kas aktivizē visus dalībniekus. Ja mēs runājam par šķēršļiem, nesen ir bijis pētījums, ko veica Skandināvijas valsts, un tieši arī viņi skatījās, kas ir tas, kas viņuprāt traucē virzībai uz klimata neutralitāti, un kā jau ļoti pareizi šeit bija atzīmēts, ka enerģētikā jau nekas nenotiek ļoti ātri. Un viens no būtiskākiem šķēršļiem ir prioritāšu bieža maiņa. Kā mēs zinām, vienā dienā mēs risinām visi drošuma jautājumus. Tad mums ārkārtīgi svarīgs ir ilgspējas jautājums, tad pieejamības jautājums, bet pēc būtības valstīm ir jārod ilgtermiņā labi sabalansēts un sev komfortabls līdzsvars, uz kuru mērķtiecīgi tad arī būtu orientēti visi soļi un instrumenti. Un attiecīgi arī tiem soļiem ir jānes kaut kāds rezultāts, kas akumulējas laika gaitā. Lūk, un ko tad Skandināvi uzskata, kas ir tie lielākie šķēršļi tieši mūsu reģionu, un kā jau zināms, mēs diezgan neatšķiramies no Skandināviem. Pirmām kārtām tā ir atkarība no laika apstākļiem, kā jau arī Līga ir atzīmējusi, tai balansēšana ir milzīga loma nākotnē un aizvien vairāk pieaugot atjaunojumu energoresursu īpatsvaram kopējā enerģijas portfelī. Protams, šai komponentei ir milzīgs svārs un, protams, dažādošanai un diversifikācijai varētu būt ļoti laba loma, meklējot atbildes. Tad atkarības jautājums, kas jau diezgan populāri izskan, daudz diskusijas ir bijušas, un šeit arī gan Skandināvi, gan īstenībā arī Pasaules enerģijas padomē aizvien biežāk un biežāk izskan jautājums par atkarību no minerāliem. Un tādām mazām valstīm, kā esam mēs, ārkārtīgi grūti atrast minerālus pie sevis. Un šeit palīgā, protams, var nākt arī cirkulārā ekonomika. Tā ir sasaiste ar ekonomiku un, protams, tas resurss, saules paneļi, kur izejvielas mēs importējam un arī īstenībā paskatoties uz visu piegāžu ķēdi, tā pievienot vērtību veidojas ārpus Latvijas, bet tiklīdz mēs palaižam cirkulārās ekonomikas ciklu, tad tas resurss jau kļūst daļēji vietējs. Tad nākamais ārkārtīgi svarīgs jautājums ir cilvēku resursu pieejamība. Mēs zinām, ka cilvēku trūks visur, vai ne? Tas nav noslēpums, bet skaidrs, ka enerģētika ir pamata nozare. Un, ja mēs paskatāmies, cik daudz līdzekļu ir paredzēts ieguldīt tuvākajās 10 gadē vai pat vairāk, ja nemaldos, tur $35 triljonu bija līdz 30. gadam, līdz 50. tad vēl vairāk. Jautājums, kurš to visu darīs? Jā, tad cilvēku resursi ir ārkārtīgi būtisks jautājums, un mēs arī ļoti labi saprotam, ka, diemžēl, zinātnes nav tik pievilcīgas jaunajām paudzēm. Tā kā ar to arī mērķtiecīgi ir jāstrādā.
Okay. Olga, bet tu minēji valsts loma. Es, godīgi sakot, vienmēr palieku skeptisks, jo, pirmkārt, man liekas, liberāla ekonomika, tomēr valsts lomu nevajag pārspīlēt, un otrkārt, valsts loma kādreiz ir bijusi arī traucējoša, nevis palīdzoša. tas pats OIK pasākums un epopeja. Es nedomāju, vai bizness ar šodienas acīm teiktu, ka tur valsts kaut ko labu pienesa. Nu, varbūt kādam tur sanāca izgriezt naudu un izņemt kaut kādu peļņu un aizbraukt uz Bahamām ar ģimeni un nopirkt jaunu mašīnu, bet lielākā daļa tomēr uz to atskatītos kā tādu neveiksmīgu valsts politikas piemēru. Kā tu redzi šobrīd, ko tieši no valsts tu sagaidītu, vai kas būtu, teiksim, tas labais piemērs no valsts puses, lai mēs no tiem strupceļiem izvairītos?
Jā, tad viens no tādiem stūrakmeņiem ir pareizs market dizains, kas arī Eiropā šobrīd tiek plaši apspriests. Tas arī palīdzētu atrast tādu labu līdzsvaru starp regulējumu un brīvo tirgus darbību, jo skaidrs, jo brīvāk var tirgus darboties, jo labāk, jo tirgus pats atradīs, kas ir lētāks, komfortablāks un
kvalitatīvāks. Tātad nevis subsīdijas, nevis tāds tiešais atbalsts, bet dizains, tā kā dizainēt spēles noteikums.
Spēles noteikums skaidrībai noteikti ir ļoti būtiska loma, jo arī investors skatās uz konkrētiem plāniem un kā tad tavs biznesa plāns varētu atnest savu efektu pēc noteikta laika nogriezni, un jo mazāk skaidrības, jo mazāk arī ir pārliecības investoriem šo naudu investēt. Un plus vēl arī bez, piemēram, tiem pašiem tirgus nosacījumiem ir atļauju izsniegšanas process. Īstenībā šis arī ir ļoti karsts kartupelis, nu Latvija nav izņēmusi, piemēram, Francijā tas process, kad var dabūt pieslēgumu un tikt līdz ģenerācijai aizņem vairāk 8 gadus. Es nezinu, vai kāds ir skaitījis faktiski, cik mums tas aizņem. Man šķiet, ka viņš ir mazāk.
Nav pozitīvs piemērs, ne?
Tiekties, jā, sliktā ziņā, bet mēs esam labāk nekā, bet noteikti šeit ir ļoti liels potenciāls. Ja mēs saprotam, ka šis jautājums ir degošs, ka atjaunojumie ir vajadzīgi vakar, un kā jau arī Līga un Kaspars pieminēja, cik ātrs faktiski tas burtiski lēns process dzīvē notiek, tad šeit ir viennozīmīgi ir liels potenciāls, kur arī valsts var nākt palīgā un ar stingrāku gribu stimulēt arī pātrinājumus.
Vēl man liela ziņkāra, tu pieminēji ūdeņradi. Es dzirdu ūdeņradi, tas man atgādina Rīgas domes senos projektus, nanoūdeni un visādas tādas abstraktas lietas. Cik tas tiešām ir tuvu kā tehnoloģija, lai būtu kaut kāds tāds pozitīvs pavērsiens?
Jā, ūdeņradi, protams, parasti vērtē kā nevis atsevišķu resursu, bet tas ir uzkrājuma veids. Un, protams, ūdeņradis vienmēr nāk komplektā ar kaut ko. Un cena, cik lēti vai dārgi sanāk saražot ūdeņradi, viennozīmīgi ir atkarīgi no tā, cik ātri vai lēti ir saražot elektroenerģiju. Tas ir sasaistīts, protams, ar tehnoloģijām un cik efektīva tehnoloģija ir piemērota konkrētajā gadījumā, jo tur, kur nav vējš, ja mēs tur mēģināsim gan nodrošināt elektroenerģijas efektīvu patēriņu, gan ūdeņradi ražošanu, tur nesaies īsta ekonomika, nesanāks īsta ekonomika. Bet, ja mēs redzam labu potenciālu atjaunojumu energoresursu ražošanai valstī, un attiecīgi arī tas saražotais apjoms pārsniedz pīķa slodzi, kur ir arī tas moments, kad ieslēdzās ekonomika. Bet, protams, ūdeņradiem ir atkal izaicinājums konkurēt ar to ūdeņradi, kas ir saražots, to saucamo greju ūdeņradi, pelēko, kas ir saražots ar fosīliem, jo tās izmaksas ir ievērojami joprojām zemākas. Bet atkal tehnoloģiski mēs varam paskatīties, cik reizēs ir samazinājušās izmaksas, piemēram, saules paneļiem. Jā, tad pieredze rāda, ka strādājot ar tehnoloģijām, tomēr tas potenciāls ir milzīgs, un ūdeņradiem arī. Viņam ir vairākas iespējas, kā izmantot, nav jau obligāti Rīgu jābūvē vienā dienā. Jā, pamazām attīstot un pieejaucot pie dabas gāzes, tas patēriņš, viņš arī, viņam ir vajadzīgs laiks. Tirgum ir vajadzīgs laiks, bet svarīgi arī nepazaudēt to brīdi, lai nesanāktu tā, ka, citi aizņem to nišu, bet mēs pa to laiku tikai filozofējam un skaitam. Būs mums izdevīgi vai nē. Tomēr drosmei ir jābūt, starp citu, tā arī viena no atziņām, kas ir izskanējusi arī Pasaules enerģijas padomes formātos, bet tas nav tikai Latvijā unikāls, ka pēdējā laikā trūks tas venture kapitāls, tas riska elements. Neviens negrib uzņemties risku. Tā ir tendence, tāda diezgan savā ziņā arī bīstamā tendence, jo biznesam ir raksturīgs risks. Jā, un tik līdz ir pārāk daudz mainīgo, un arī, ja politika un valstīs iejaucās ar subsīdijām, tad tiek izjaukts riska apetītes līdzsvars, un komersants gaida un skatās, vai labi es investēšu, uzņemos risku, bet ja kāds nāks ar kropļojošo pasākumu, nu, tad attiecīgi arī visa mājiņa tajā brīdī brūk.
Jā, ar to risku, man liekas, parasti tā, ka, ja mēs kā jauna un salīdzinoši nabadzīga valsts pārlieku riskējam, tad tas ir riskantāk, ja, teiksim, tur bagātā Norvēģija vai Amerika riskē, un mēs pēc tam pamācamies no viņiem, tas ir bišķiņ pareizāk. Nevis mēs būsim pirmie ūdeņradī, nanoūdenis tur tiek kaut kur izmantots, mēs visi zinām, ko tas nozīmē, bet, kā piemērs. Tā kā tas, man liekas, ir svarīgāk, ka bieži tāda labāka attīstība ir izvairīšanās no strupceļiem un no krīzēm. Vismaz finanšu pasaulē tāda pamatpatiesība. Tev labāk ilgtermiņā ies, nevis, ja tu tur izdomās brīnumus, bet ja tu vienkārši izvairīsies no problēmām, no krīzēm, no strupceļiem. Par to arī mums kā reiz paneļa diskusija.
Bet tad ir risks parādās, piemēram, mēs redzam, ka tāpat kaimiņos Igaunijā un Lietuvā tomēr tīri objektīvi, varbūt vēsturiski iemeslu dēļ, vējs attīstās ātrāk. Vēja enerģijas jaunie projekti. Iespējams, tāpēc, ka viņiem nebija HESI un nebija vairs atomelektrostacijas un arī ogļu stacijas drīz aizvērsies. Un tāpēc dažreiz mums tikai domā to piesardzīgo pieeju. Mēs vienkārši būsim vienā momentā, kur redzēsim, ka Igaunijā, Lietuvā ir pietiekami daudz vēja stacijas un Latvijā neatmaksājās vairs, jo mums ir labi savienojumi. Un vēja piesātinājums panāk.
Īstenībā katrs panelis vienmēr kaut kādā brīdī sasniedz punktu, kur mēs sakam, kaut kas ir labāks Igaunijā un Lietuvā, un kaut kas ir sliktāks Latvijā.
Pagaidām labāk ir Latvijā. Pagaidām viennozīmīgi enerģija. Viņa skaudība skatās uz mūsu hesiem un teciem, bet svarīgi noturēt šo pašu pozīciju.
Šitā foršāk.
Un nepazaudēt brīdi. Arī, jo ir vajadzīgs laiks. Tiklīdz pazaudē brīdi un kāds aiziet pa priekšu, un tad pēc tam ļoti grūti viņus panākt un apsteigt. Un tas ir tas, kur es tiešām gribu
Edvard, no tavas puses Līga vēl grib kaut ko.
Papildinot to, ko Olga un Kaspars minēja, ka attiecībā uz to valsts iejaukšanos, ko tu teici, ka nevajag jau iejaukties, lai nav tā kā rojka, tad es domāju, ka šeit valstī ir tā iejaukšanās, lai nodrošinātu efektivitāti. Nevis tāda kaut kāda finansiāla iejaukšanās, bet tieši tā pastumt, lai parādītu, kurš ir tas pareizais ceļš. Ja mēs, piemēram, skatāmies no tā, ka, teiksim, saules parkiem efektivitāte ir tikai 10%, bet vēja elektrostacijām efektivitāte ir 40, pat 50%. Ja? Un tad mēs paskatāmies, vai mēs 400 megavatu parku, saules parku vēlamies integrēt tīklā un norezervēt 400 megavatus ar daudz mazāku to reālo produktivitāti vai vēja parku. Un vai, piemēram, tas kopā arī, mēs, piemēram, tiem saules parkiem šādiem milzīgiem, mums tātad vajag arī ļoti lielas platības. Tā vidēji rēķinot tur 1 hektārs, 1 megavats. Tas nozīmē 400 megavatu parks, 400 hektāri, kur faktiski tā var būt lauksaimniecības zeme, kur, kaut kādas kultūras tur var mūsdienās arī audzēt apakšā, bet, tā tradicionālā lauksaimniecība vairs nesanāk. Vējparkam tas ir daudz efektīvāk. Ja? Līdz ar to valsts var būt tā, kas ievirza, uz ko tad mēs vairāk ejam, ka mēs saulīt varbūt vairāk pašpatēriņam skatāmies, vēju vairāk eksportam jau.
Edvards jau laikam ir atmetis cerības, ka mēs nonāksim līdz viņam, bet Līga tomēr izprovocēja viens mazs papildu jautājums. Tev ir klimata un enerģētikas ministrija, un es vienmēr domāju, kā tās prioritātes jūs izvēlaties, jo tur jau kaut kāda pretruna arī brīžam parādās. Ja mēs domājam par klimatu, tad mums būtu milzīgi interesi pārinvestēties un kā reiz, lai visi tur taisa solāros paneļu parkus.
Patiesībā kā reiz nav pretruna, jo klimata puse tā galvenā lieta, manuprāt, ko dara mūsu klimata kolēģi, ir samazināt seg emisijas. Ne? Un ar visiem šīm AR tehnoloģijām, ko mēs veicinām, tas jau ir tas primārais. Mēs ejam uz seg emisiju samazināšanu.
Bet enerģētiķi tev tomēr runās par glabāšanu, par bāzes jaudām, par pārvades jaudām, par citiem tematiem. Viņiem tā kā varbūt mazāk patiks tie solārie paneļu parki un tā. Un klimata puses atkal tev tā cepur.
Tur atkal viss atdurās pret to, ka jānodrošina balans.
Ok, balans. Labi. Edvard. Kas ir balans un kas ir strupceļi, varbūt pārdomas no tavas puses?
Es domāju, pirmais jautājums ir no manu viedokļu, vai mēs runājam par enerģētiku kā par nozari, vai mēs runājam par politiku un pakalpojumu, sabiedrisko labumu, kā to ministrs arī pieminēja. Jo no nozares viedokļa daudz no tā, ko mēs tikko dzirdējām, arī par šiem biznesa plāniem, par to, ka tirgus sakārtos, tas ir tāds individuāli projektu masa, kur uz katru var skatīties, kāda tad ir perspektīva tam biznesa projektam un kā mēs redzam nozares attīstību. Bet es domāju, ka ļoti svarīgi tas, ko ministrs bija pieminējis ievadrunā, ka mēs arī skatāmies uz enerģētikā uz ļoti nozīmīgu kopējo interesi, kopējo labumu. Un no šī viedokļa tur noteikti, manuprāt, aktīvai valsts un labi definētāji tālredzīgai valsts politikā ir ļoti nozīmīga loma. kaut arī tādēļ, ka tas ir ļoti dārgi un investēt tur, kur nevajag mūsu valstī ar mūsu ekonomikas lielumu nebūtu tā labākā izvēle. Otrkārt, arī man zināms pārdomas izraisījums Latvijas bankā bija tikšanās ar daudziem enerģētikas nozares pārstāvjiem, tā skaitā arī ar dažiem AR asociācijām. Un vienā gadījumā es dzirdēju tādu interesantu frāzi, ka mēs saprotam, ka šobrīd mums ļoti apmierina Nord Pool biržas cenas, gāzīsim iekšā biežāk, kamēr nāk nauda, un mēs apzināmies, ka nākotnē visdrīzāk mēs vispār varam slēgties no tīkla un ražot ūdeņradi. Bet tad ir jautājums, kāda ir sabiedrības interese šajā procesā. Tad šobrīd lūdzu nodrošiniet pieslēgumu, pārbalansējiet tīklu, lai tas būtu. Pēc tam, paldies, ka palīdzējāt mums nopelnīt naudu, tagad domājiet, ko darīt ar šo infrastruktūru. Tā gluži nevajadzētu. Ja? Tātad te ir tā loma valstī nodrošināt, ka šādu projektu tomēr jau šobrīd ir skaidrs, tātad, kā tas biznesa modelis ir veidots, kas tajā ir iekļauts un kur tā sabiedrības līdzdalība, cik viņa liela ir un cik ir sabiedrības interesi to līdzdalību veidot, skatoties arī tālākā perspektīvā. Tādēļ es domāju, ka tie strupceļi pamatā veidosies tad, kad mēs aizmirsīsim pirmkārt par sabiedrības interesi, skatīsimies to tikai kā uz biznesu. Otrkārt, es domāju, strupceļi arī būs tajā brīdī, ka mēs īstermiņa skatu liksim kā prioritāro lemjot par noteiktām politikām vai par noteiktiem projektiem. Jo mums jāmēģina tomēr salīmēt arī tā tālākā bilde, lai cik neprognozējami ir arī tehnoloģija attīstība. Bet tomēr kaut kāda nojauta šobrīd jau veidojās, un manuprāt, masīva elektrifikācija ir viena no tām sastāvdaļām, un ūdeņraža tehnoloģija attīstība perspektīvā tomēr, tas ir tas, kur var jau just, ka tajā virzienā tomēr mēs virzamies. Un kam ir attiecīgi diezgan liels saikni arī ar citām politikām, jo enerģētikas politika arī nepastāv viena pati par sevi. Tā ir līme starp visām pārējām politikām. Enerģija būtībā tā, kas nodrošina fizikālu, kustību, ieskaitot, kā saka, mitohondriem mūsu organismā līdz tam, kas notiek šodien apspriestajos jautājumos. Un, lai kaut kas kustētos, ir svarīgi, ka tās pārējās ekonomikas sastāvdaļas un valsts ilgspējīgas politika vispār viņa eksistē. Un šobrīd enerģētika savā ziņā ir aizskrējis pa priekšu. Mums tomēr ir liels vakums ilgspējības politikā valstī. Un, ja nav skaidrs kaut vai mobilitātes politika, vai mēs taisamies pāriet uz aizvien lielāku individuālo transporta līdzekļu izmantošanu, varbūt elektrificēt, varbūt nē, vai tas būs sabiedriskais transports. Mainās tas, kam jums ir vajadzīga un kāda veida enerģija. Sabiedriskais varbūt ies uz citu veidu, nevis uz baterijām. Ja? Ja šīs politikas nav īsti nodefinētas, tad enerģētika arī drusku tādā vakumā šobrīd attīstās. Vienīgais labums ir tas, ka enerģētika, manuprāt, ir tagad tik uzkarstas temats, ka varbūt viņi pavilks arī to pārējo. Un tad arī nebūs tie jautājumi, vai klimats un enerģētika ir dažādas lietas. Nē, ilgspējīga attīstība ir viens kopīgs mērķis, un enerģētika tajā ir dabiska sastāvdaļa. Ja mēs redzam to kopējo bildi, mēs arī ļoti viegli spēsim nodefinēt gan enerģētiku, gan arī nonākt līdz konkrētiem biznesa projektiem.
Ja, super, tā ir viss. Mēs bijām vīrusu eksperti dažus gadus atpakaļ, tagad visi esam, man liekas, solāro paneļu un enerģētikas eksperti. Bet man, Edvard, ļoti patīk tas, ko tu teici, ka sabiedrības intereses vienmēr pirmajā vietā. Un es esmu dzīvojis, strādājis arī Zviedrijā. Skandināvijā, man liekas, tas ļoti labi definēts, ka kas ir labi sabiedrībai, tas ir pirmajā vietā, pēc tam tas būs labi arī uzņēmējiem, un pēc tam tas būs labi arī finanšu iestādēm un visiem pārējiem. Bet pirmais ir tomēr, kas ir labi ilgtermiņā un kas ir sabiedrības interesēs. Nevis domāt otrādi, ka kas būs labi biznesiem, tas jau pēc tam būs labi arī sabiedrībai, tomēr sākt nebaidīties, sākt ar to sabiedrības interesi kopumā. Tā kā es pilnīgi piekrītu tam uzstādījumam. Bizness pēc tam pielāgosies, tas ir biznesa darbs atrast tos veidus. Bizness ir darvinistisks, biznesam ir jāmēģina tur konkurēt, izdzīvot, neizdzīvot un atrast tos veidus, kā tai sabiedrības interešu rāmī izdzīvot. Tā kā pilnīgi piekrītu tam uzstādījumam. Jo savādāk atkal, tā kā ROIK projektiem, tad, kad mēs pelnam un peļņa ir liela, tad tas ir mūsu nopelns, biznesa nopelns, tad mēs esam baigie varoņi. Tad, kad ir zaudējumi, tad tā ir valsts vaina, un tad valsts ir vainīga. Tā liekas, tas tā kā nav taisnīgi pret valsti un nav taisnīgi pret sabiedrību. Tā kā paldies, ka šo
sabiedrībai noteikti ir divas lietas, kas ir, ko elektroenerģija var dot. Viens ir tātad zaļo enerģiju, lai varētu caur elektrifikāciju padarīt savas nozares zaļas, kur katrai nozarei tagad ir dažādi mērķi gan transportam, gan apkurei, gan citur. līdz ar to, un arī cenu zemāk. Līdz ar to būs vairāk AR projekti, līdz ar to kaut kādos brīžos būs zemāk, labi skaidrs būs balansēšanas sistēmā, cits lietas dārgāk. Bet tas atkal ir paver iespējas uzņēmējiem jaunām biznesa attīstībām. Un, lai arī iespējams man ļoti gribētos, ka būtu ilgtermiņa politika un mēs strādātu pēc politikas un Latvijas energo stratēģija ir, bet dzīves situācija pierāda, ja mēs vispirms būs politika un pēc 5 gadiem taisīsim vēju un saules parkus, lietuvieši igauņi būs uztaisījuši un tad vairs būs cita situācija. Līdz ar to tur ir tāds jautājums, kurā brīdī to var gaidīt un vai gaidām vai negaidām.
Bet kāpēc ir pieņēmums, ka politikas taisīšanā vajag šausmīgi daudz laika? Jo domāšana neaizņem daudz laika, jums skaidrs izvēles, jums ir skaidrs process, par kur jūs domājat, jūs zibenīgi pieņemat lēmumu. Tā ilgā domāšana ir tad, kad tu nezini, kas ir jāizdara, ka tu nesaproti, ko tu redzi, un tu ilgi mokies vienkārši, jo tas tā klasiskā tēze nav, ka ja ir pareizi uzstādīts jautājums, tad tā atbilde uzreiz jau ir. Ja ir nepareizi uzstādīts jautājums, tad nevar saprast, kāda ir atbilde. Manuprāt, tas ir tīri intelektuāls izaicinājums saprast, ko mēs kā valsts vēlamies sasniegt, kā sabiedrība, un enerģētikas tajā vienkārši dabiski ieguļās. Ja mēs joprojām 30 gadus pēc valsts atjaunošanas mēs nekādīgi nevaram saprast to lielo bildi, tad ir tas, ka politikas prasa daudz laika, un tad tās nepārtrauktās skaņošanas starp ministrijām un nekas nekustās uz priekšu. Manuprāt, to var visu atrisināt, vienkārši saņemoties drusku to smadzeņu podu pakustināt. Tad es nekādā mērā nevarētu piekrist tai tēzē, ka politikas veidošana vienmēr prasa vaiprātīgu laiku. Tas, ka tā praksē tā mums sanāk, ok, bet pēc tāda principa var pateikt, ka arī biznesa plāni visi ir realizējami tikai pēc 10 gadiem. Kaut ko izdara ātrāk. Tad var.
Par to domāšanu man uzreiz divas replikas. Viens ir Einsteins slaveni teica, ka domāšana ir vissmagākais darbs uz zemeslodes, tāpēc tik maz cilvēku ar šo darbu nodarbojās. Un otrs ir, man liekas, tā Latvijas lielā problēma bieži ir, kur mēs mēģinām paši izdomāt divriteni. Mēs paši tur filozofējam par nanoūdeni un ūdeņradu un vēl visu kaut ko nošpikojam, ko citi dara. Paskatāmies, kas ir pasaulē labie piemēri, kas strādā, kas nestrādā. Es atvainojos, es esmu liels Latvijas patriots, Sosbērnu ciemata padomes priekšsādātājs un viss pārējais, bet man tomēr žēl, ka mēs kā maza valsts tik daudz sēžam un domājam, ka mēs varam izdomāt tā vietā, lai nošpikot, pastītos, ko citi dara un vienkārši varbūt ātrāk, feināk, efektīvāk ieviest dzīvē. Tā kā par to domāšanu pamatā piekrīt, bet nevajag aizrauties ar domāšanu. Laba špikošana biznesā bieži ir labākais, ko tu var izdarīt.
Bet noteikti nevar arī salīdzināt komersantu biznesa plānu ar valsts pamatnostāļu izstrādi, jo, protams, ka tas aptver pilnīgi citu lauku, pilnīgi tas ietver visas tautsēmniecības nozares kaut kādā mērā. Tas ir demokrātijas process, kurā, kad mēs izdomājam, tas nav kā komersants, kurš izdomā, un tā arī priekšnocība nolēma. Mēs kā ministrija, piemēram, vai iesaistītās ministrijas izdomā, un tad tas ir diezgan garš saskaņošanas process, lai visa Latvija būtu beigās apmierināta.
Mums pēdējās 10 minūtes mēģināsim baigā ātri man pāris lietas, ko es tiešām gribu no jums saprast, un tad nezinu, vai ar roku rādat uz augšu, uz leju, vai kaut kā, ja ir ko teikt, tad ātri pasakat, bet iesim ātri cauri. Jūsu prognozes par patēriņu ir visādi te gudrinieki, kas elektroautomobīļus pērk un vēl visu kaut ko, un vispār, kas ar patēriņu notiks? Uz augšu, uz leju efektivitāti prevelēs vai kopējā tīklā elektroenerģijas?
Jā,
alkoholu, nē.
Es pirms gadiem, kad es biju jauns šī nozarē, lasīju vienu literatūru, lai izglītotos, un redzēju, tas bija 2000. gada materiāls, kurā zīmē līknes, kā 2000. gadā elektrības patēriņš šausmīgi augs. Tur katru gadu pa cik procentiem. Jo būs datori vairāk, būs datu centri un tālāk. Realitātē tas nenotikās, realitātē bija energoefektivitāte.
Bet kas būs uz priekšu?
Tagad mēs esam ļoti līdzīgā situācijā, ka mēs redzam elektroauto, mēs redzam dažādus arī datorus, pāriet arī tur transporta nozare, siltuma nozare. Pagaidām ir sajūta, ka ies uz augšu, ir diezgan liela ticība.
Cik procenti gadā?
To var dažādas strīdēs. Piemēram, mēs redzam Latvijas pārvades operatoru un Lietuvas pārvades operatoru plānus, kas ir kā divas līdzīgas valstis, atšķirība ir milzīga. Vienam ir laikam 2% vai 1% gadā, otram ir kaut kur daudz, līdz 70% līdz 30 gadam. Kopējais. Līdz ar to tā atšķirības ir milzīgas. Un taisnība iespējams kaut kur pa vidam.
Labi. kāds cits ātrs piebildi, jā,
Es
patēriņš.
domāju, ka kopējā gigadžauli, ja mēs saliekam fosīlo enerģijas avots, elektrību visu kopā, varbūt arī nedaudz kritīsies uz energoefektivitātes rēķina, bet proporcija šajā visā bildē elektrībā viennozīmīgi augsta, tāpēc, ka es neredzu daudz ticamu alternatīvu fosīlo resursu aizvietošanai, kā tieši šī elektrība un ar to saistītais ūdeņrads.
Es piekrītu, es ar liels elektrības fans, protams, esmu palicis īpaši karam sākoties un tā tālāk. Glabāšanas jautājums.
Varbūt padalīšos, Pasaules ierēdnes padome ir izvērtējusi vairāk kā 30 dažādus scenārijus, OECD, tur garš saraksts. Pārsvarā visi tic, ka elektroenerģijas patēriņš augs, neskatoties uz milzīgu ieguldījumu no energoefektivitātes, pateicoties pārējai no fosīlajiem. Protams, jau mēs pieņēmām, ka mēs iesim uz tiem ambicioziem mērķiem, viss ir atkarīgs no tā, vai mēs tolerējam business as usual, no kā es sāku, vai mēs pieņemam uz to pieņēmumu, mēģinām sasniegt, ka tomēr klimata neutralitāte būs. Ja mēs ejam uz to mērķi, elektroenerģijas patēriņš nevar neaugt.
Okay. Glabāšanas jaudas. Tas man tāds ar neatbildēts jautājums, jo it kā elektromašīnu varētu izmantot kā bateriju un vakarā tur kā saka, krāsni mājā darbināt, sildīt bērniem vakariņas, bet īsti tās tehnoloģijas vēl neļauj. Glabāšana tāds liels izaicinājums, kāds pārdomas, kas ar to būs kaut kāds pozitīvs lēciens nākotnē vai ne, vai glabāsim ūdens formā Daugavas kaskādē, kad būs un tad tērēsim, kad vajadzēs vai kā?
Tas jau tomēr ir viens no tiem risinājumiem, kā nobalansēt to tirgu, tad, kad mums ir tās lielās atjaunamo energoresursu jaudas, un līdz ar to ilgtermiņā jau mums, protams, uz to glabāšanu ir jāskatās. Skaidrs, ka ne jau mēs Latvijas elektroenerģijas patēriņu nobalansēsim ar elektromobīļiem, bet ar lielu jaudas baterijām, ar to pašu ūdeņradi, iespējams Baltijas reģiona līmenī ar kodola elektrību.
Tad viena mēs to nevaram atrisināt. Tas man noved pie nākamā jautājuma pārvades jaudas savienojumu ar Skandināviju, ar Lietuvu, Igauniju. Cik liels darbs tur vēl priekšā?
Vakar tieši ir labs moments. Vakar tieši Vācijā tika parakstīts savstarpējais memorands, kur Baltijas valsts ar Vāciju vienojās par kopīgu darbu, lai izveidotu starpsavienojumu starp Vāciju un Baltijas valstīm. Tā kā, tas ir viens drosmīgs solis. Zinu, ka paralēli ir diskusijas atsākušās par Zviedrijas savienojumu.
Vācieši jau paši glābjam. Viņi jau tur, kā saka, sliktākais piemērs elektrības tirgu
arī
pasaulē.
Šodienas prezentācijās, man liekas, McKinsey prezentācijā bija slaids, kurā bija rādīts,
ka ne jau vācieši mums palīdzēs, bet mēs vāciešiem, vai ne?
Tas ir jautājums, kā atrisināt šo komerciālu lietu, bet pēc būtības vajadzību sabiedrība Vācijā nepietiek zemes, ko darīt. Mums ir pārējiem iespējams gan jūras potenciāls, gan vispārējais.
Okay. Labi, un slavenais jautājums par bāzes jaudām. Tas joprojām ir TEC 1, TEC 2, tas ir kaut kas no gāzes atšķirīgs, vai kā mēs darbināsim visus elektroauto, tā kā saule nespīdēs, vējš nepūtīs, 2 mēneši sausums būs bijis, ko tad?
Tuvākajā 10 gadē citu variantu, kā dabasgāze īsti nav. Mēs redzam joprojām pat pasaulē būvē jaunas dabasgāzes stacijas.
Tur to ūdeņradi var jaukt klāt, kaut ko viņš var darīt.
Tas, pie kā mēs strādājam, lai pakāpeniski jauktu ūdeņradi vai domāt arī citas tehnoloģijas. Diemžēl ilgtermiņa uzkrāšanas risinājumi īsti komerciāli nav pagaidām. Ir runa par īstermiņu, varbūt vidējā kaut kāds risinājums. Pie tā tie joprojām tiek meklēti, būs, nebūs, bet tuvākā 10 gadē diezgan pārliecinoši modernu termoelektrostaciju efektīvu loma tajos brīžos ir neizbēgama. Un pat, ja runā dažādus pētījumus, lai sasniegtu, piemēram, klimatu CO2 neitrālu, 90% ir viena lieta, 95% jau ir daudz grūtāk, 98% vēl grūtāk. Līdz ar to TEC loma kaut vai tiem pēdējiem 5 vai 10 vai 2% būs ļoti daudz gadus un ļoti kritiski nepieciešams.
Bet tāds varbūt ir muļķīgs jautājums, bet vairāk tomēr vietēji resursi, šķelda, atjaunojamie koksnes resursi, kaut kā gāzes aizstājas, cik tas ir reāli vai nē? Tās jaudas, protams, mēs kā baņķieri redzam, mēs daudz finansējam pašvaldībās šķeldas katlu uzstādīšanu, nomainot gāzes katlu, vai tas pagaidām ir piliens jūrā un to kopēja elektrības bilance īsti neredzat?
Ne tik lielā apmērā, bet vairāk mūsu virziens tad būtu uz biometānu. Tas gan ir kā, tāds alternatīvais nākotnes ceļš, tāpēc mēs arī gribam izveidot šos ievadas punktus pārvades sistēmā, kur biometāna ražotāji var atbraukt un ievadīt tīklā iekšā saražoto biometānu. Faktiski,
tas pat jaudīgāks kā šķelda varētu būt potenciāli pienesums?
Jā,
Bāzes jaudām,
lielāks apjomā. Jā. Faktiski, protams, ka ja mēs skatāmies uz kaut kādu 30. gadu un pēc tam, mēs varam runāt par to ūdeņradu, bet, kā jau mēs sākumā runājām, lai mēs to ūdeņradu ražotu, mums vajag to elektroenerģijas pārpalikumu, no kā ražot to ūdeņradu. Un šajā brīdī mēs līdz tam vēl neesam nokļuvuši, līdz ar to tur tad paliek tā gāze.
Okay. Mēs tagad uztaisīsim tādu rezumējošo apli, un tad mūsu diskusija beigsies. Un es tā izdomāju, arī bišķiņā pārstāvot un pareklamējot Sosbērnu ciematu asociāciju Latvijā, bērnam ir svarīgi pateikt vienu labu lietu, un tad vienu lietu, ko viņš var darīt labāk, jo citādāk viņš tevī neklausīsies. Ja tu pateiksi sliktu lietu, viņš nemainīsies un neklausīsies. Un tagad katram no jums ir jāpasaka viena laba lieta, ko Latvija enerģētikas ziņā ir izdarījusi vai dara, un viena lieta, ko Latvija varētu darīt labāk vai uzlabot. Es nezinu, varbūt Līga, es riskēšu ar tevi sākt. Varētu būt ļoti gatava. Tev jauna ministrija kā nekā.
Laikam droši vien, ka tā jaunā ministrija ir tas patiesībā, kas vēl ir pie kā
kas varētu būt labāk.
Vēl vairāk, kur mēs varam attīstīties tālāk savā darbībā, bet jo mēs vēl esam pavisam jauniņi, bet ja tā nopietni mēs skatāmies, tad droši vien atkrastes vēja parku ieviešana ir tas, ko mēs varam labāk.
Labā lieta, ne, tev jāsaka labo.
Jāsaka labo. Labā lieta ir, faktiski tas, ka mēs, principā šīs rezervētās jaudas tīklā, ar kurām no vienas puses mums it kā ir jācīnās, jo varbūt ir pat pārāk daudz, no otras puses šis bums, ja tā var saukt, ir ļoti labs. Mēs ļoti gribam iet arī uz šo pašpatēriņu veicināšanu, uz to, lai mājsaimniecībām ir saules paneļi, lai mēs strādājam arī pie regulējuma energokopienām, kopīgošanai. Es teiktu, ka tas ir tā labā ievirze, ka mēs esam strauji uzrāvuši uz to, lai veicinātu elektroenerģijas ražošanu. Tas, pie kā mums ir jāstrādā, ir atkrastes vēja parki. Tur mums ir jāizstrādā gan regulējums par izsolēm, gan vispār virzību uz to. Mēs esam daudz skatījušies arī kaimiņu valstu, īpaši, piemēram, Dānijas pieredzi atkrastes vēja parkos. Un, mēs redzam, ka mums ir gan labā pieredze, ko no turienes var smelties, gan arī lietas, ko mēs redzam, kas varbūt nemaz viņiem tā nestrādā. Un, mums ir mājas darbs tieši šajā jomā.
Okay. Es esmu pārliecināts, ka kāds pierakstīja, ko Līga teica, kas ir uzlabojumā lieta. Viņai vesela ministrija pēc gada vēlākais prasīsim atpakaļ. Kā tad sanāca? Kasper?
Es sākšu tā kā pārstāvu Latvenergo. No labajām lietām pieminētais jau tas, ka iepriekšējās vadības un tā tālāk ir izveidojuši gan modernus tecus, kas ir ļoti noderīgi un uz baltas skaudības skatās mūsu kaimiņi. Regulāri uzturēt hidroelektrostacijas, kas arī ir šī pavasarī bija lieliski, palīdzēja visai Baltijai un Latvijai. Un arī, protams, mums ir labi iestrādnes jaunajos virzienos, kā piemēram elektrouzlādē, kurā mēs varam lepoties ar CCS Eiropas standarta uzlādnes. Ātrās stacijas mums ir visvairāk Baltijā jau vairākus gadus īstenībā, ko mēs bieži vien nerunājam. No tām, kas būtu jādara, skaidrs, ka nevajag apstāties pie esošā. Iespējams, mēs pat bijām iemidzināti ar to, ka mums ir ļoti liela daļa ir atjaunojami energoresursi. Mēs attīstām jaunos vēja parkus, to pašu kopuzņēmumu ar Latvijas valsts mežiem, kur daudz ko vēl darīt. Bet ir arī, lai mēs varētu vēl straujāk, ir pasaulē lieta, ko dara citas energokompānijas, arī aktīvi uzpērk citus uzņēmumus, kas ir dažādās attīstības fāzēs, un arī Latvenergo pirmdien izziņojām, ka mēs izsludinām konkursu, kurā mēs aicinām pieteikties dažādiem saulu un vēja parku attīstītājiem, un mēs esam gatavi viņus iegādāties un izvērtēt un labākos iegādāties.
Baigi super. Tās labās lietas, ko jūs abi nosaucāt, ir faktiski kaut kas, kas, manuprāt, ir jūsu abu kontrolē līdz ar to, tās uzlabojumās lietas. Līdz ar to jūs paši arī varēsiet strādāt pie uzlabošanas. Paldies, Olga. Viena laba lieta un viena
par labām lietām. Kaspars pateica tās labās lietas, ko es gribēju pieminēt. Vēl man bija gāzes krātuvas sarakstā. Bet, par to, ko varētu darīt labāk, protams, jaudu deficīts ir ārkārtīgs šobrīd, nekad tādu vēl mūsu reģions nav redzējis, tad tajā virzienā, bet atkal iestrādes ir, tad tos čēršļus jānovērš. Bet tas, kas vēl ir jādara šobrīd, ka bija minēts, ka ir lietotāja intereses un ražotāja intereses. To var risināt ar naudas valodu, jo, piemēram, par citu valstu piemēriem bieži vien lietotāji var finansiāli ieinteresēt, lai, piemēram, tas pats vēja parks būtu varbūt netik tālu, un pašvaldības, manuprāt, šeit varētu būt aktīvāks, lietotājs var iesaistīt.
Ir tie modeļi, kur ja tu dzīvo tuvu, tev ir atlaide uz elektrību vai ne kaut kā?
Vai nu tā, vai arī ir modeļi, kur lietotāji kopienas, tas ir kopienu stāsts, kļūst par daļu turētājiem. Tad viņam pavisam cits skats uz šo vēja parku. Tādā gadījumā, jo viņi ir finansiāli ieinteresēti. Un tad viņš vairs nav tik drausmīgs, bet viņš ir gana otrādi, kļūst ļoti skaists un pievilcīgs. Un tad visi sāk domāt, ja ne par attīstību, tad vismaz ne par nojaukšanu un bloķēšanu.
Nu, super. Paldies. Edvards tāds nobažījies, vai būs vēl kāda labā lieta, bet obligāti jāpasaka labā lieta.
Tad... Labā lieta atslēgšanās no Krievijas gāzes apgādes sistēmas un sliktā lieta nepietiekama mūsu zinātniskā tehniskā potenciāla iesaiste inovatīvu tehnoloģiju izstrādē, īpaši uzkrāšanas jaudu, vietējo uzkrāšanas jaudu, jaunu tehnoloģiju izstrādē un arī citu alternatīvu siltuma apgādes veidu, kā pieņemsim pazemes siltuma izpēta un šo tehnoloģiju attīstību.
Ok, tikai nevis sliktā lieta, bet uzlabojamā lieta, vai ne? Un tad satiksimies pēc gada un cerams būsim gājuši pozitīvā virzienā. Paldies klausītājiem, paldies godātiem paneļu dalībniekiem. Man liekas, bija ļoti vērtīgi. Paldies!
Paldies arī mūsu moderatoram Kārlim Danevičam. Paldies, Kārli, paldies, dārgie paneļa dalībnieki. Nomainīsim atkal bildi, liekam jaunu bildi iekšā, jo mēs straujiem soļiem dodamies tālāk uz nākamo priekšpēdējo paneļa diskusiju ACDC Tech formā, kurā mēs apskatīsim iespējams jau tēmas, kas ir cilātas jau iepriekš. Mēs runājuši par pieprasījumu līdzsvarošanu, par efektīvu elektroenerģijas izmantošanu, un šeit mēs ieliekam jaunu atslēgas vārdu kombināciju elastības servisi. Kas ir elastības servisi, kā tie var mums palīdzēt, kur ir iespējams jāpiestrādā nākotnē, to mēs visu noskaidrosim caur ārvalstu prizmu. Nākamā paneļa būs angļu valodā, līdz ar to next up, we're going to talk about the global success stories with flexibility services, and we have gathered a great panel for you here today, which will be moderated by a professional, young professional from Sadals Tīkls, because they're not just good at the technical things, they see the big picture and they can talk about it. So please, with a loud round of applause, welcome on the stage. He's the R&D technical lead at Sadals Tīkls, Pēteris Lūsis.
So, thank you everyone for having me today. It's really been a pleasure to talk about this very new topic as flexibility markets. And actually, I would like to start by introducing our panel members that we have all gathered for to hear. And first, I would like to ask Simon Ben-Maraz, Head of Technology and Infrastructure at Irena Innovation and Technology Center. Simon, thanks for joining. And we also have today Patrick Lindvall from Pickloflex, arriving from the UK. He's the European sales lead. And today we also have Mindaugas Pranaitis. He's the head of innovation and service development at ESO, distribution system operator in Lithuania. And we also have two guests online joining today. I would like to start with Yvonne Ruvaida, joining online from Sweden. She's an energy engineer by training and also business strategist at Vattenfall Distribution. Yvonne, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Waltz Greentals. Waltz is also joining from the UK. He's the marketing lead at Kaluza, and Kaluza is an energy platform that has learned how to gather a large number of customer loads and aggregate that for the use of flexibility services. And he's the marketing lead at Kaluza. Waltz, thank you for joining. Right, so speaking here, probably for the first time about the flexibility markets in Latvia, it's a new topic for the distribution system operators. So what does it really mean? For many years, we have known how to build and maintain our electricity network. If there's a congestion risks, we now have learned how to build even bigger transformers and bigger lines. But now the best practices are changing, and this opportunity of flexibility markets are really rising in Europe. And it's really new for us to think that we could actually pay for customers for them to reduce load or generation at certain times, and that could allow us to not make investment in new lines and transformers, for example. So, and I'm really happy that we have this great panel today who are experts who have expertise in running the flexibility markets. And I would like to start today with Simon. You already met Simon in the morning. And you talk a bit on the importance of grid flexibility. And perhaps my first question to you really is on the way how we will manage this increasing amount of generation and also load. So there are two options. One is obviously direct control of the customers, which kind of seems too obvious. We know how to do it. We can reduce their consumption or even turn them off in the worst case scenario. But then there's this market-based solution. So just if you could give your perspective on the market-based solution as the solution.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So you mentioned this is a growing topic, of course. That's not the same complexity having to manage renewables at around 9%. And when we're going to increase the decarbonization of the energy system, our scenarios show that we're going to have to manage more than 60% of variable renewables. So there is aspects to consider. Of course, there is the nature of the resources. They are intermittent, which means that they introduce variability and a certain degree of uncertainty from the system operator. So from that perspective, and of course, it's important to understand this perspective. Flexibility for an operator, for a DSO, is about maintaining in real time the balance between supply and demand. And of course, increasing renewables will pose challenges that today can be solved. And you mentioned there is solutions that today can be implemented on the customer side, but also on market-based solution. We see sometimes, for example, countries introducing capacity markets solution, where those solutions are really leveraging the nature of a very highly integrated system there. And for example, we see the case in Europe, where there is countries with very high share of renewables. I'm thinking about Denmark, for example. I'm thinking about Germany, where they're already innovating and they're already introducing solution there. So capacity markets is one. The second, of course, you mentioned the demand response programs. The Danish response program are quite advanced. I'm based in Germany. I have a program with my utility, a virtual utility actually, where it's very well possible for a customer to adjust based on events. And of course, from the operator, there is, of course, managing the peak demand, but also managing, it's a German word, but in English, it's called the Dunkelflotte, so managing events in the year where there is little availability of wind and solar. So this is where we need to have solutions coming from the markets that are accepted by the operator to respond to those. And we have the solution. Of course, gas is in the table, but all our scenarios show that gas will be reduced to the very minimal level, and you will have solution, dispatchable generation coming from renewables, and green molecules as well will be able to pass those difficult days for the operators there. So yes, market-based in summary is more looking at vertically integrated market, and of course you have other solutions that come where countries are not yet achieve a very high level of renewables, where those solutions are not yet extremely relevant for them, but this will come in 2030, and of course for the net zero targets for 2050.
No, thanks, Simon, for that. And just wondering then, from your perspective as working at Arena, who's like have really the global perspective, who is leading at the moment in terms of developing and running flexibility markets?
Yeah, so I'm not going to introduce news, but we have very good example in the developed part of the world. You have Europe with the countries with very high share of renewables that are leading the way. The US as well, of course, is coming back, I would say, but they always had very good solutions on advanced metering system, grid management solutions that are, let's say, putting them as a pioneer and at the forefront of those new services. You have also to look at China with huge investments. I'll be next month in Shanghai to discuss these topics. Huge investment in smart grid technologies. So they are preparing to address those aspects of replacing or decommissioning high number of fossil fuel plants and replacing them with viable renewables. So there, in the developing part of the world, we have seen good examples, for example, in Chile, in Mexico, where they have introduced very good solutions that are introducing responses to their specific grid. Chile has a very specific grid along the coast and need to address certain issue of, due to the geography. And of course, India and Brazil are just behind because they are announcing extremely ambitious plan to introduce renewables. And the operators have already asked the questions how to address those issues. The ones that are a bit lagging behind are countries with the lack of very stable and operating grid infrastructure. In Sub-Saharan Africa, you have issues of those aspects being not yet prevalent there. And of course, they are sometimes investing in what we call stranded assets that will pose problem because they are locking themselves in solutions that in the future will not actually deliver the flexibility that is needed to respond to those situations.
Thank you, Simon. Actually, what I heard is that as long as you have a stable power supply, you're pretty much ready for flexibility markets to at least investigate that as an opportunity compared to traditional solutions. Well, Patrick, if I may ask to you now, also obviously came from the UK, you work for the Piccolo Flex, who is the leading platform that brings together the DSOs and together with all the customers providing this flexibility. Could you give a bit of the perspective from the UK? Obviously, people have heard that you've been running flexibility markets for 4 years now. The numbers in terms of capacity contracted and tendered are going up. So we would really love to hear your perspective of why you are so successful.
Well, thank you very much, Peteris, and thank you so much for having me on the panel today. I think there are many contributing factors to why the UK is perceived as a more mature market when it comes to flexibility. But I think there are possibly two overarching contributors that's led to where we are today. So the UK, as many other countries, are faced with the challenge around decarbonisation, decentralisation, and digitalisation or digitisation. And I think this was realised by the UK government a while back, where they released the Energy Act. And I think the collaboration between the UK government and the regulator Ofgem has been a successful one. And I think the regulatory incentives are important to get to start the process properly. And Ofgem released a regulatory framework called RIO. And for anybody who's not familiar with what RIO is, it stands for revenue equals incentive plus innovation plus output. And as part of this framework, they also released a mechanism called the TOTEX mechanism, which basically incentivizes system operators to look at, to approach this issue in a more holistic way, and not just looking at the CapEx piece, which is traditionally what you would do, but also look at operating expenditure and combine that into a TOTEX mechanism. So from a regulatory perspective, that really sort of gave clear directives and regulations and incentive for the system operators to change. I think another really important piece to point out here is that there need to be a willingness and a curiosity from the system operators to really embrace the new reality that we're heading towards. And I think the system operators in the UK have been very good at embracing this, and together with the ENA, which is the Energy Network Association in the UK, have been collaborating and really effectively starting to take action on the route to flexibility. So I think if you look at what's happened in the UK since then, is you can almost look at this as a flywheel effect. So it sort of starts with sort of strong incentives from a regulatory point of view. That gives confidence to the DSOs to go out and start embracing the new possibilities. So when you start getting congestions in the grid, which you will eventually have, that sort of creates the need for flexibility. And when that need for flexibility arises, you also incentivize marketplaces like Picklo to go out and innovate. And that innovation piece also then brings confidence to the flexibility service providers, which is an extremely important piece in making flexibility work. It gives them confidence to go out and invest in assets in the network, and that ultimately creates the liquidity that is so important to have. And that feeds up to the top again, and you start a new cycle. So I think this flywheel effect really has an important piece, and it's all sort of been triggered by regulatory incentives and collaboration from the system operators.
Thank you, Patrick, for that. And I really love that you actually used the word incentive. So it's like a carrot and stick question, and it seems that the regulator gave the right incentives that actually DSOs are encouraged to go that way, and it's not like the push and you have to find a solution. So yeah, thanks for that. Also, we have Yvonne here, and probably next question would go to you. You're working for a large distribution company, and Vattenfall has also worked with flexibility services now for a couple of years. And maybe since I'm also from DSO, I would like to really hear, how did you get that push for flexibility through the company? Like, how did you get it implemented? If you could maybe give a bit of the perspective.
We are still working with the implementation. It's a long journey. I don't think we have the same strong incentives from the regulatory side in Sweden like we have in UK. I do think it is a vital issue. But in Sweden we have not a big issue with decarbonization because we have a lot of fossil-free electricity, but we have the situation with electrification of the society. So a lot of actors want to electrify because they want to use fossil-free electricity. And it's from the transport sector, it's industry, it's new industries, but also old industry. So we really have, I mean, it's a situation that is disruptive with a lot of new customers wanting to connect to the grid. Big customers, if you look at the load, very, very fast if you compare with the past times. So we do have one incentive that's actually to be able to connect customers in the how fast they want to be connected. But we are working on both market-based flexibility, but also with non-firm connection agreements. And we do know that we have to work with both. So it's actually understanding coming regulation that is very clear on that we need to work with market-based solutions also. That is one of the drivers, and we want to understand what is it, how do we work with market-based flexibility. But we also have one driver that is a little bit new for us. It was not a driver in the beginning, but we do understand that our existing customers are becoming more and more flexible, and they are changing their behavior. So existing customers do not act as we have planned for in the past. And this is also something that is a driver for us to work with flexibility, because then we will be able to solve new kind of situations coming up because existing customers are changing their behavior because of electricity prices or because of participating on balancing markets or having their own production on their own site. So this is also a driver, I would say quite a new driver that makes it important for us to understand flexibility, to participate, to be able to purchase and coordinate existing flexibility. So there are many different types of drivers.
Thanks, Simon. And how do you introduce the change internally in a company? Because you need to increase the risk appetite for that too. Because obviously it's very safe when you just have a bigger transformer lines, but and now taking that risk that customer may actually not deliver. How do you approach that risk within a company?
I mean, we have had a project in our company that's called BioFlex, and this BioFlex project, we've been working a lot with how can we judge risks, different kind of risks in our net planning, risk with different operating situations, and also what is flexibility. I mean, it is managing an increased risk with something that's not risk-free. So we're talking a lot in a new way about risks that we perhaps didn't do before. But I think the challenging thing is actually that when we work with flexibility, we see a lot of things in our organization that we need to change to be able to work with flexibility. I think that's the hardest issue, not working with risks, but understanding that, okay, we need better information about how it is in our grid. We perhaps have wrong information about assets or metering. We need to understand things in a different way, because working with flexibility, you work a lot more digitalized than you do otherwise. So flexibility is driving digitalization, and digitalization has demands on how it works in your organization and what knowledge you have. And so it's in a way an improvement work, but this takes a lot of energy in the organization. And I think that is the challenge, the biggest challenge. If it would be easy to just put on flexibility on the surface, it would be much easier. But the problem is it changes the way you think and work, and you have to improve your processes in every part of the organization almost. And that is what makes it so challenging.
And just very curious.
So you need time and effort and a lot of discussions.
And who is leading that transition? Is it the business team? Is it innovation? How do you get
different
across all the...
Different companies in Sweden do differently. We have a project in Vattenfall distribution that is prioritized, where we work with implementation work together with the company. So I mean, we have some projects who were like pilots and demonstrations, but now we have like a organization working with the implementation work together with the organization. But I do know they do different in different companies in Sweden. One company is working with, they have a unit where they have all the new competences needed, and then they try to, cooperate with the rest of the organization. I'm not sure that there is one solution, but you need to understand that you need to address all the different perspectives. It's the operators, it's the grid planning, it's how to make forecasts, it's about new business models, about the new regulation and understanding also the new regulation. So it's about metering, and it's about, of course, exchanging information and information architecture. So you really need a lot of different competences, and you need time so that more people will get knowledgeable, because one of the questions I got from business side very early was, why should we work with markets? We are working with the grid. We shouldn't work with markets, but we need to understand market design, market coordination, how does other market works, how does flexibility works, to understand flexibility. So you need that competence today. I mean, I'm a power system engineer. I didn't work with markets when I started to work with flexibility markets, but you need to understand the wholesale market. You need to understand aggregation models. You need to understand balancing. So, there's like new competences needed in the business of the grid operator, and that's a key issue.
Thank you, Ivan, for the comments. Really, it was interesting to hear the insights from Vattenfall's experience. And we have another grid operator here, Mindaugas. So Lithuania was one of the probably last countries that have introduced into legislation rules for flexibility services for distribution system operators. Could you just share a bit of this experience? Why exactly now, and then what was ESO's role in this?
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here. And it's a very comfortable place, so we will have a long discussion, I would say. And yes, we are really happy that we passed first stage of flexibility services. We transfer from European directives to our national law the rules, the way how to do this flexibility. And this way was quite long. We start since 2019. Then 2022 in December, we get approved from our regulator that is the rules and descriptions are correct. So we have like a first stage finished, and now we can start talking with a market. What colleagues mentioned, we have a paper which allows us go and show and test flexibility services. So a way was long, and cooperation between ministry and regulator was really in very good shape, I would say. And we have a long discussion with TSO, supplier, aggregator, procurement commission, scientists, and many consultation, because flexibility service is new, as was mentioned of a previous colleague, and we do not have a experience on that. So we are happy, and now we have legislation. Now we are looking for partners on another side in the market who can sell us this flexibility services. So this year we plan to run several procurements of flexibility services, and thanks to our partners from UK, we learn a lot from Piccolo, because UK is a leader, I think, and we learn a lot from them. We tested the platform. So, and the third thing is the European Commission funded project, OneNet. We are participating together with Sadalisticals, with Piccolo. Also, together, we learn a lot, and the countries like Lithuania, we can take this experience and implement in our networks. And also was mentioned, we need to do a circle. First stage done, now we need to test it, come back, improve our regulation, because when we write the document 1 year ago, now it looks different, and we see things which should be improved. So it's, I agree that it should be done in a circle. So it's just, we think we did a lot, but it's just the beginning of a long journey. And yeah, it's my impression.
Thanks, Mindaugas. And it was interesting to hear that also you started actually in 2019 already looking at this until the legislation was introduced. But maybe could you also reveal as a small secret, the distribution system in Lithuania is very, very similar to ours. And where do you see the business case for flexibility, first of all?
It's a good question, because we get this question from our technical department. Where is the business case? Flexibility, it looks fine. And yeah, was also mentioned congestion management, and we do not, it's not appearing now. We do not get, we have a congestion, but we are close to congestion management, and it's close to the limit. And one case is in cold winter, when heating is up, there are some places where flexibility service can be applied instead of reconstruction. Second one is when, for example, TSO grid line should be maintained or reconstruct. We will disconnect, and in order to build new network, we can apply flexibility service in particular place for some short period to avoid blackout and etc. Third thing, the renewables, electron vehicles, it's implemented in a network, and we think that will create a problem which could be solved by flexibility. For this, we are only, how to say, investigating. And finally, with new customer connections can be applied. And as one mentioned, we plan to test several places, different places, and to see how flexibility services can help us. Because if we apply flexibility service, anyway, we have to ensure resilience and it should work. So now we are in a piloting phase, and we have, I would say, three different business cases. We will test it in the flexibility.
Right. Thank you, Mindaugas, for that. Does that seem similar to the UK, all those use cases?
Yeah, I think it's the challenges are fundamentally the same, but as we talk about, there are differences in the markets that needs to be addressed. You can't just roll out the same solution across all different markets. But you know, what's been mentioned already so far, the thought processes and the complications and the discussions are largely the same. I think from a technology point of view, it could be frustrating from time to time because you want to move fast, but this has to take a bit of time. This is a systematic change, and discussions has to be held in multiple levels. But yeah, I would say that it's very similar to what we see in different places in Europe.
You want to comment?
Similarly, yes. I think, first of all, congratulations to passing from the EU directives to the law. I think that's a great achievement. I don't think that's very long, 2019, 2023, so that's good. No, for example, we've seen a very successful demand-side response program in Germany, for example. The Bundesnetzagentur, the network agency, showed that there was up to 9 gigawatts available for demand-side response for disconnection less than 5 minutes, and up to 2.5 gigawatts for more than an hour, flexibility for more than 1 hour continuously. So that's a very good example. Chile has announced and launched a day-ahead market for energy and ancillary services. That's very good. And Mexico has a very good capacity market to procure flexible resource as well, announced as part of their new programs.
Thank you for bringing in that global perspective in the game. So it's not just Europe working on this, it's actually happening everywhere in the world. Right. Then maybe you're just going to give a word also to Waltz and Kaluza. And Kaluza maybe have solved one of the most complicated questions on actually how to engage even small households in such flexibility markets, because it's easy to get customers when you have 1-2 megawatts that you can let's say just turn off on demand, but like Kaluza has aggregated thousands of households and their loads. And yeah, maybe Walt, if you want to kind of bring in the experience you have, and if people are really willing to give the control over their electric appliances and for a couple of dollars, or there's more to earn. So yeah, would really love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here. So yeah, we operate in, I guess, what you would call a niche space, which is about engaging end consumers in households in flexibility. And it's, you know, it is a complex space, and I'm not going to say that is something that will solve all of the grid flexibility needs, right? Trying to solve for net zero and really decarbonizing the grid is a puzzle, and that's one of the pieces you need there. In terms of, you know, how we've done it, so we've been operating in this space for the past 4 years. We've been building we've built a software solution that is being offered to retailers, so energy retailers around different markets. UK is the main one, but also US, California, so Australia, and also some EU countries. And the main thing we're aiming to do is we are aiming to help energy suppliers offer end consumers a seamless way to connect with the grid and become basically a prosumer. There's 2 ways to do that, right? There's engagement tools where customers can actively play a role in responding to certain grid needs, or the automation, which is where we build actual integrations with different device manufacturers. So for example, a car manufacturer gives us access to the telematics, and we basically optimize the EV charging in a more active manner. So as you mentioned, you know, we've got into a good number of, you know, more than 20,000 devices connected around the world. In terms of, how do customers get engaged with this? There's different factors, right? There's a monetary benefit, obviously. As you said, it's not a lot of money to a customer, so it's never going to be a massive difference on their wallet. It's going to reduce their energy bills, and different technologies drive different cost reductions. But it's actually about kind of a trade-off between how much money you save, but also how easy it is to actually take an activity and save money in the market. And there's also additional benefits, which we've seen, which is not just monetary, it's about reducing their carbon footprint. And things that we've seen in other markets work is really people becoming aware of the role they play on the grid and making an impact or a positive impact on the energy system on their side. So again, UK is a great example where National Grid ran a project last year, which was all about managing winter peak. And they realized that their capacity reserve isn't massive for the winter peak. So they launched a scheme called DFS, so Demand Flexibility Service, where basically customers get paid a certain amount of money if they managed to reduce their load at peak time by kilowatt. It was made, they made it very easily accessible for people. And, there was a level of awareness for people that, there's a shortage of gas supplies due to different global events, right? And really kind of awareness of the fact that, people need to be careful about when they use electricity and how they use it, or gas for that same reason. So that kind of raised the awareness from the kind of customer's perspective about the fact that, flexibility is an essential part to decarbonize, but also to create a more independent, self-sustaining energy system, which is, again, quite an important topic. So a lot of the emotional factors actually play a role in why customers are starting to engage more with this. Yes, there's some money in it, not a lot, but there's a lot of emotional drivers that once you make it easy enough for people to do, that really attract people. So, for example, one of the things we have done to give kind of some shine a light on how we've made flexibility really simple is in the UK and in Australia, actually. So customers that get an EV, right? We connect those EVs to flexibility markets, and from a customer's perspective, it's really easy, right? You pay, let's say, 20 cents for your electricity for the whole household per kilowatt hour, right? We offer a rate that's 1/3 of that, so they'll have to pay 7 cents for the electricity that only goes into the car. And all they need to do is opt into, yes, I'll let Kaluza control the charging of my car. The reality for most cars that charge at someone's home is that they plug in, so they're plugged in for an average of 8 hours a day. They actually need to charge for an hour and a half. So there's a lot of room to play from a kind of grid perspective and wholesale market perspective. So to a customer, it's as simple as I'm opting into this scheme and I'll pay 1/3 of my average electricity price for my EV charging. So it's super simple. There's some saving. They know the benefit, and it benefits the system because you have an asset that is now fully flexible and can be used at a time that is best for the grid, best for the system, and at a time when you have more renewables available, because again, it's hard to control how much wind output you get or how much solar you get. So it's money, but it's also simplicity and making it as easy for a customer to understand why they should do it beyond just savings. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Walt, for that. Then maybe just a follow-up question. So you talk about direct control of those devices remotely. Is that always the case, or do you see also for opportunity for the cases for devices you can't integrate, and you just send a signal to customer and hope that it will turn up the device, or is there also opportunity for those kind of flexibility?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a mixture both. The way we look at things is, I think there's a certain asset or device type in customer's home that you would look at and consider as, it's very valuable when you automate the control. So, and there's a limited amount of devices that applies to. It's something in the HVAC space, so be it a heat pump, or in a warm country, it could be an AC unit, and an EV, and potentially a battery in a home, right? Those are assets that use a lot of energy, are relatively high power, and actually have quite a lot of flexibility around, when they're plugged in and how you do things. So for those assets, automation is the best way to do it, and it also, from a network perspective, gives a DNO, a TSO, a lot more, I guess, credibility, or a lot more reliability, right? Because automated demand response is fundamentally more reliable and more predictable than pure behavior-based. That being said, there's also a lot of value in behavioral demand response. So for just other small appliances, right? There are, I guess, diminishing returns in trying to integrate with a washing machine or a fridge, right? It's a small load. It's part of a lot of kind of everyone's daily life. So there's value in behavioral nudges to people to suggest, oh, you should use less at this time because of X, Y, and Z. And then it becomes more about messaging. And yes, it's less predictable, but it's proven to work in a lot of markets. So, we've seen great results in the UK from the DFS trial, which was largely just a nudge for people on a day-ahead basis. You would tell them, hey, between this and this time, you should use less electricity. And there's a scoring system. If you drop your load below X amount, you get a higher payment. There's different ways to incentivize people to do that. And similarly in California, obviously, it's behavioral demand response is quite, I guess, well established in California, right? News talk about, when I went there, for example, you would watch the news and they would just tell people, oh, tomorrow, by the way, everyone should use less electricity in these times because of the extreme heat waves. And everyone's quite aware of that, that they need to reduce the usage. Obviously, it is driven by an extreme in the market, which is, they have forest fires, they have actual extreme events that are triggered by using electricity at the wrong time or by overloading the grid. So, once you go through that, you kind of learn about the fact that you should be very careful when you use electricity. But it's, it definitely has a role to play, and I think in combination with automated demand response in households, the behavioral aspect is important. And in a lot of ways, customers learn, they have a synergy where someone who gets an EV wants to understand why they should charge their car at a different time. And once they learn that, they understand that in general, they should try and use electricity more overnights or more during the day because there's more solar or wind available. And it goes the other way as well. If a customer is familiar with the behavioral demand response and understands why they should try and reduce peak time usage, whenever they get the electric vehicle, whatever, 2025, 2030, when they get that electrical vehicle, they will understand that if they charge at home, they should they should charge it at times when more renewables are available, and it just creates this good synergy in general in customer awareness, I think.
Thanks, Walt. So indeed, I see also that's about the learning curve of the customer. But then from the DSO perspective, maybe this is a question I have to my colleagues here from DSOs as well. The biggest concern is that what if the customer doesn't deliver? So you expect that there will be load reduction, it doesn't happen, and that's a real risk of congestion. Any solutions?
Yeah, I do think there's one solution. I do think that we need to understand the risk and of course make a risk analysis. How big will the risk be if I mean, some of the customers will not answer. And if it's only one customer, it can be very tricky, of course. But sometimes we will need some kind of insurance. It will be different for different grid situations. But sometimes you perhaps need to combine market-based with non-firm connection agreements, where you can perhaps, for example, have methods in the grid that could, you could use in the worst case scenario. But I do think you really have to look at and assess different grid situations and try to find sometimes some kind of, I don't know, find a word now in English, but backup solution that you can use if the worst case scenario occurs.
Thanks, Yvonne. Anyone else would like to give some ideas?
Yes, maybe I bring an example from the other side of the hemispheres. In Australia, I mean, they have a market-based solution, but in some occasion where there is very low supply and high demand, they have also, let's say, load shedding solution to do that. Overall, most of the time, it's about behavioral changes, and this is something that takes time at the customer end. But we see a lot of potential of digital tools to help customers understand the need to be an integral actor in this in those new solutions.
Thank you for that.
If I can add on that, just to talk about some of the ways to mitigate that, right? The different markets have taken different approaches, but there's, in this case, right, it becomes a market design problem, right? You can put all of the risk on someone like us and make it a penalty, like a massive penalty, if you don't deliver what you said, and it's up to us to be able to really guarantee that something's going to come out of it, and if it doesn't, you get penalized. Texas is a good example of that. Alternatively, you can build a market that has a lot of capacity reserve, and it's there on standby in case some of the cheaper solutions don't come to help, right? So I think in a lot of ways this is a market design problem, and people are going to come to market and will provide capabilities that can deliver, right? Our approach, for example, is when it comes to behavioral demand response, we take a very conservative view of how much we can deliver so that we can ensure that what we tell a DSO is easily achievable. Most of the times we actually go above what we said we could deliver, and there's problems in that as well. But I'd say, especially at scale, it's quite, human behavior is quite easy to predict, especially at scale. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, you can quite easily predict how much you'll get out of it. So you'd be surprised about that.
Thank you for the comments. I guess with this we can also wrap up the session. I want to thank all the colleagues for sharing the experience from very new to flexibility markets to the most probably experience that we have at the moment here. And so yeah, thank you all. And if you don't mind, I will just wrap up in Latvian. So, jā, paldies visiem, kas apmeklēja, kas skatījās tiešraidē. Mums šodien tiešām bija 5 fantastiski runātāji ar pilnīgi dažādu pieredzi, gan no tirgus puses, gan no sistēmas operātoru puses. Bija, protams, visinteresanti redzēt, kad šie elastības tirgi attīst tikai ne Eiropā, bet īstenībā arī vietām, kurām mēs nevienmēr zinājām, kā Latīna Amerika, kad visi tīkla operatori, tā teikt, kur ir stabila elektrības piegāde, tad skatās uz alternatīvām tīkla pārbūvei. Protams, bija ļoti interesanti arī dzirdēt no Kaluzas, kuriem ir pieredze, kas skatīties, kā var pat mājasemniecību, tā teikt, iekārtas agregēt, lai nodrošinātu šos pakalpojumus. Un kad, ja klientam tas process ir vienkārši, tad viņi noteikti ir ieinteresēti arī, tā teikt, atdot šo kontroli, teiksim, par elektroauto uzlādi, kā piemēram, tā teikt, jā, paldies arī par tiem ieskatiem. Protams, arī bija interesants redzēt, kā lietuviešu stāstu, ka tas ir, ja mēs šodien varbūt pirmo reizi atklāt runājam par elastības tirgu no sadalas sistēmas operātoru perspektīvas, tad tas prasa laiku, un tas nav tad, ka mēs vieni paši nāktu klajā ar risinājumu. Mums jāstrādā kopā regulātori. Mēs dzirdējām, ka ESO ir iesaistījis arī pat universitātes šajā pasākumā un citus puses, lai saprastu, kā virzīties uz priekšu, un tas tik tiešām prasa laiku, lai ieviestu šādu veidu pakalpojumus tirgu. Un, protams, jāpaldies arī Patrikam, kurš ienes mazliet perspektīvu no Anglijas, kur ir šobrīd veiksmīgākā tirgus platforma. Tā kā, jā, ceru, ka tas bija mazliet interesanti. Šie kungi vēl būs šeit pat uzturēsies un droši varat arī pēc tam uzdot jautājumu pēc sesijas. Paldies! Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you to the great moderator, Pēteris Lūsis. Pēter, paldies tev! Liels paldies arī par kopsavilkumu latviešu valodā. Paldies jums! Nomainīsim atkal skatuves izkārtojumu. Paldies jums par dalību šajā panelī, un mēs gatavojamies noslēdzošajam panelim. Runā, ka tāda draudzīga sāncensība var būt labs motivators. Nu, skaidrs, ja ir konkurence, tad nav stagnācija, taču vai tik nelielā tirgū kā Baltijas valsts izaicinājumi, ar kuriem saskarās enerģētikas nozare, ir līdzīgi, un varbūt pat tajā sāncensības ēnā esam palaiduši garām kādas sadarbības iespējas. Fóruma noslēgumā saldais ēdiens visu 3 Baltijas valstu sadales sistēmu operatoru vadītāji uz vienas skatuves. Arī šī saruna, protams, būs angļu valodā un pēc tam īsts kopsavilkums latviski, tāpēc ļaujiet pārslēgties, ladies and gentlemen. The main event of the evening is here. The representatives of all 3 Baltic distribution system operators on one stage here at ACDC Tech. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities of co-working together? We're going to hear all about it. So right now, let me introduce to you the moderator of this discussion, also representing Sadals Tīkls. I'll get out of the way. He's the Director of Regulatory Affairs at Sadals Tīkls. Ladies and gentlemen, Dzintars Kauliņš. Dzintars, take it away.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Dzintars Kauliņš, and I'm working at Sadals Tīkls. The title of today's discussion is Road to Energy System Transformation. Clearly, the transformation hasn't begun today. It has begun already a long time ago. I would say 15 to 20 years has already passed since we have already seen huge developments in energy system. In mid-2000s, we experienced unbundling of large monopolies in Baltic states, thus creating independent transmission system operators, independent distribution system operators, developing electricity traders. Obviously, these changes have cross-border impacts, and we already see them when the electricity traders are offering their services across the border. Later on, the EU set ambitious targets for 2020. They were challenging for 10 to 12 years to be reached. We have reached them in terms of energy efficiency, renewables, and also climate targets with CO2 emission reduction. These targets later on developed as climate neutrality, and now we are speaking about even longer-term perspective, 2050, when we all have to reach climate neutrality. Well, for energy experts, clearly, these issues are well-known facts. They are no new thing. But for an ordinary citizen, these issues are not so understandable. For ordinary consumer, what is important? Well, the first question is, do I have electricity at home? Can I plug in my appliance and use it? The second question, which is important, how much I will have to pay for it? Is this service an expensive one or cheap one? Well, and those who would try to look into media would see that there are some new trends coming up as energy communities, flexibility. Today we also heard about those in-depth, difficult topics. But when we are talking about climate neutrality for 2050, then clearly these are questions which are difficult to understand. If I would have to say it in a simple terms, I would say, well, what will change for me? What will change for me when we are on this road of transformation? What is going to change for me? And a reasonable way how to understand what is going to take place in the next 5 years is to, one, well, I do not have a crystal ball, obviously, but then a good approach is to look for experts, who know their thing, what they are talking about. Today, we have this opportunity. I have on the stage 3 experts from 3 national distribution system operators, CEO level, so the broadest perspective and the most in-depth perspective. These are 3 people to whom I can ask simple questions about what is going to change. They can answer from their own perspective. They can compare what is common in Baltic states, what is different in perhaps your specific situation. So therefore, I think that this is a good way how to understand what is going to take place in the period of the next 5 years. Clearly, 2050 is a very almost science fiction timescale. At least that's what I would think. But if we are speaking about energy sector, then clearly 2050 is like only 3 days ahead of us, because this is such a difficult area where changes are taking decades to develop. So in order for us to have a result in 3 days, we already now need to have answers what we are going to do today and what we are going to do in the next day. So let me introduce you. So here we have Sandis Janso, the CEO of Latvian DSO, Sadalas Tīkls. Then we have Mihail Harm, so CEO from Elektri-Levi, Estonian DSO, and Renaldas Radvila, CEO from Lithuanian DSO, ESO. So the first question, very broad one, but please answer in a way that I would understand as an ordinary energy consumer. So what are those few things that I will have to face in the next 5 years? What are those 5 things or 3 years that have to be achieved for all of us so that we would be ready to actually reach 2050 in only 27 years' time? So perhaps, Sandis, you can go first on this very simple question.
Yeah. Thank you, Dzintars, for a very simple question on which I guess it's very difficult to give a simple answer. But okay, if I have to put in a kind of consumer perspective, next 5 years, I guess the one is clear that renewable energy not like will be, but it is already here. We see our solar development, and we see the wind parks are coming, and that's a good part. We will be getting more and more greener, but the challenge for the grid and for the energy society is that this production will start to fluctuate. When there is a fluctuation in kilowatts, there is fluctuation in prices as well. So I guess for a normal customer, the next 5 coming years will be definitely price fluctuation. So we have to take in account when the sun will shine, when the wind will blow, the price will be low, maybe even sometimes with a minus sign, what we actually experienced, I guess, last week. And when the sun is not shining and when there is something happening, then the price could be very easily a couple hundred euros per megawatt hour. So for consumers, then it means so either to switch a bit the way of behavior and wash your washing machine during when the days sunny and windy, or you start to think about some kind of batteries or somehow how to manage those peak loads and etc. For the businesses, of course, it means that I guess everybody should start to think how to cover the peaks, how to manage the peaks, and the guy who will collect the electricity in a time when the price is 0 or minus, and sell when the price is 200, those will be the winners.
Good. So I understand that I have to take into account the price fluctuation and also new opportunities if I want to be an active user. But how do you see it? Whether your judgment or assessment of the situation is similar, or there would be different things that you would suggest to me?
Thank you, and good day to everyone from my side as well. Sure, I agree with everything that was said, and when looking from Estonia and what we see has happened in the electricity system, first of all, when we were back in 2018, then we had maybe 1,000 these active users of our grid. Today we have already 16,000
electricity producers in our grid, and around 4,000 to 5,000 are in a connection process. So if not this summer, then definitely next summer we will have more electricity production in our grid than we will have consumption. Already in this April, we had hours where 75% of the electricity consumed in our grid was produced there. So only 25% came from the transmission system. So this has been a huge shift, and when I think myself back to 2005, when these 2020 goals seemed so far away and they seemed almost impossible to reach. But now we are in 2023, and the 2020 goals, they are history, they were easy, and now thinking to 2050, then once again, I first of all believe that whatever the goals are set, then they will be reached. But what has to be remembered is that, and what I think is the most important factor is this needs investments. We as grid operators, we need to invest, and what our customers need to remember is that all these investments, that they need money, and this money needs to come from somewhere. And now this is one important discussion that needs to happen between us, between the policymakers, and also between the customers. How do we fund these investments? Will it be this kilowatt-hour price? Will it be some government subsidy, meaning that the money comes from the taxes that we pay, each of us? Or maybe there is some other way. But anyway, we need to figure this out, because a couple of more numbers. Last 5 years, we invested 500 million. So approximately 100 million euros per year. We made a little forecast looking at all the renewable targets, all the safety targets and whatnot. And we need to invest around 1 billion euros. So approximately 200 million euros a year, and this is the minimum number. So where do we get this money? This is the big question.
Okay, good. So this doesn't sound very optimistic if you are saying that we have to pay more. But what I would catch from this is that we have to rethink how we are looking at the system overall. So the electricity is not flowing from the top to bottom, but now it is already staying in some points 75% already is produced and consumed in a DSO level. So in Latvia still not there, but Estonia is ahead there. How about Lithuanian case?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, you touched very interesting topic, because the network perspective from the customers or consumers view is so we never or we we don't see network in such way. And it's a change that DSO operators and in general the energy market have to switch, and the customer centricity model have to be implemented in the energy market, because I'm actually have two topics. So first of all, how we see the energy market in Lithuania and in all Europe and Baltic countries from DSO perspective, and what the customer will feel, how they will see these changes. Actually, for us, the main important topic is network planning. So it means that for each customer, small or big, business customer or residential customer, is possibility to connect to the network. So effectively, for the smallest price, and effectively, during the 2 weeks or 1 month, so you don't have possibility to have this source, this electricity. Another part is network management. So we have, as a DSO, we have a lot of data, and in general, previously, these data were used only for our own needs, and what we have to do and how customer will feel the change during the next, I will say, not maybe 5 years, but at least 5 years, So they have to use this data too
for their own, regular life, like colleagues said, to decide when to start the washing machine, or washing machine would start automatically, depend on the prices from the market. And the last part is market facilitation. So we as a DSO have to be market enabler, and customers have to be, or have possibility to be, active. And I'm talking not only about the customers, but the market players too. So because today we only last year we saw the increased customers' attention to energy sector when the prices increased. Previously it was no one cared about so much about the electricity. It was about the electricity, about in general the energy market, because it was only like you said, between the experts, important topics.
Okay, I think that you actually touched upon an issue, what has to be done. So DSO as market facilitator, how will you achieve it? What are your actual plans in the next 2, 3, 5 years so that you as Lithuanian DSO could and be an active market facilitator? What are those concrete steps that you have to do?
Yeah, so first of all, the open data. So we need to open as much data as possible to the market, one thing. Another part is clear and open communication with market players. If we're talking about the EV charging station installers or producers, we have to provide them information, very early at the beginning when some project starts. And what we do, we have some, hubs or like to say the open clubs where we openly every month or every quarter we are discussing and talking about the new things, about what are their needs, what we as a DSO have or must provide them to grow their business, and to, in general, we are talking about the data, about the data and about our plans.
Good. So I think that this is a very good approach to involve all the stakeholders and to gather them together and to discuss those matters that have to be improved. Are Estonians doing the same thing, or what are your plans for the next few years that you have to implement in your organization?
Yes, definitely, and I would underline the word customer and being there for the customer. We are not building the grid for ourselves, we are doing it for the customers. And if I look 5 years in the future, or maybe 20 years in the future, and the biggest change that I want to make is that if our customers think of us, then they are happy, then they have a smile on their face, they are not like angry, and these are the monopoly guys, these are the guys who only want money, and you never get anything from them. This is the change that I want to make. And in my mind, how we get there is, first of all, we are flexible. We are offering different solutions to the customers. If we have the data, we make it open. We share it with the EV charger installers, or maybe they are some renewable producers. We have the grid information. We have the plans. We make them open. We have the software that they can use. And so this is one of the changes that we need to make. And of course, then there is this issue that how do we operate the grid as efficiently as possible? And the one change that I want to make is having these kind of flexible connections that, sure, you do not need to pay much for grid upgrading, but as a result, you can produce electricity maybe in the mornings, in the evenings, when there is not so much production in the grid. Or if you want to charge your EV, then you can do it during these hours when the others are not using it so much. So giving this choice to the customer, it is either you pay more in the beginning and then you cannot use the grid as much, or you pay more and then you have all of the grid available to you. So this is one way how to get there.
On this issue, if I may ask, do you see it as a DSO task, or is it a task for flexibility service providers?
I think it's both, that we need to work together with the flexibility providers. We actually made a pilot project. We have these islands in Estonia, and these are connected to the main grid through subsea cables. And one of these islands has already so much solar production of electricity that we cannot install not a single kilowatt more. The grid will just shut down if we do it. And then we thought that, okay, let's purchase some flexibility. We asked for demand response, we asked for batteries. And we made a procurement, but sad to say that the prices that we got out of this procurement were not cheap. And so now we are thinking what to do with it. So this is definitely an option, but we need to find ways how to make it efficient as well.
Okay, good. So what I hear is that you already have an experience, not a very positive one, but still I think that this is something that the other DSOs could learn from Estonian colleagues. Sandy, are our customers happy with what we are doing?
Yeah, I guess I just can agree with both colleagues that the data availability it's crucial. So therefore we have launched actually last month our new STEP platform where the data is available and where the market players will be able to get it. So that we have done, and we have to go ahead with this. And of course, we have to bear in mind that this green movement and decarbonization goes together with electricity, and all that puts on us higher pressure. So if I moving from my wooden stove to the heat pump, I assuming that electricity will be in my let's say in my yard always, despite the weather, despite the renewables or fossils or whatsoever. So this puts to us a pressure in terms of grid quality, of grid predictiveness, maintenance. So the grid should work 100%. And the third thing is that we should be able to monitor the future development trends, so that due to the grid building or extensions or something like that shouldn't suffer the business or development of all the green activities of business development, etc. So that's kind of rather sounds simple, but it's very difficult to understand how the consumption will develop, where will come investments in, where we should be already today with the infrastructure, that tomorrow there will be the businesses, tomorrow there will be production, consumption, and all that. So that's, I think, it's a quite big challenge for us to understand. So, and if we come back to the previous panel before that panel, so what will be the electricity increase in the future? So, and the answers usually is like from 2 to 100%. So the range is rather wide. So to really understand where we should invest, where we should put the grid, that the new businesses, the new trends are able to come into the country and to the region.
Good. Well, from what I hear is that for me as a consumer, I have to take into account that there will be more and more players who will call me and say, hey, Zinters, I would like to have a business deal with you. Please allow me to participate in your flexibility services. Well, I don't know if I'm really happy about it, that there will be additional people who are trying to call me. Well, okay, I think that it is important to look for new developments and new goals that we are trying to reach, but there is always this one question which not often is asked, but I think is very important. What should be avoided? What we shouldn't lose in this process when we are trying to achieve those new goals? Perhaps you have a version on this simple question.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, there is well, always these things you need to keep in order to be successful in the future. But definitely there are things to avoid and to learn from our past mistakes. And And I think that one thing we can learn from Lithuania, at least looking from Estonia, we are happy that we do not have this, is this kind of net metering when people can produce electricity in the summer and consume it in the winter. This does not make any sense. And I do hope that we will not get this kind of subsidy scheme in Estonia, because it only makes inefficiencies into the system. So this is one thing that I hope we can avoid. Another thing that we need to keep in mind is that there aren't any free lunches. So one thing that we need to avoid at any cost is having this kind of mindset that the grid is free, or that it is like I do not need to pay for it, somebody else needs to pay for it. What we need to do is we need to agree that if somebody is using this resource, then they need to pay their fair share. And then what we can discuss is whether it is more fairer, or it is better than it is the big customers that are paying more, or it is better than it is the households that are paying more. This is the debate we can have, but in the end somebody needs to pay for it. So maybe two things to avoid is that we do not have subsidy schemes that don't work, that make inefficiencies in the system, and then avoid thinking that it is free. It is not.
Do you already have this question risen up? Who should pay about for what? Is it a national discussion?
It is, in a sense, because right now we are still in this world where the larger consumers are subsidizing the smaller ones. So it is not too big of a sum. It is about 20 million euros a year that the largest consumers of electricity are paying too much in order for us to subsidize the people living in apartment buildings. So it is there. We have calculated if we would have it in that way, that everybody is paying only their share, then we should take this 20 million euros a year from the biggest customers and put it onto the bills of the smallest ones. We haven't done it yet.
Okay, well, it seems that this is a topic that you have to deal with a national regulator. Well, how about in Lithuania? What are those things that have to be avoided? And would you share the view that net metering system should be avoided in Estonian case?
Yeah, now we have a real example what we have to avoid, and I think that we're talking about that because, when we talked about the market activity, first of all, from my point of view, the DSOs are the enablers at from the very early beginning. So sometimes we do the project as a pilot just to boost the market in general, from the scratch. And all the stakeholders, the politicians, the regulator, and other parts have to have the willing to change the process, to change the calculation, the regulation, and so on, because we are not in the baby stage. We already grew up, and we need to move where other countries, all not only Baltic countries, but in general the Europe countries already are. So we are discussing, and for example this calculation model which is in Lithuania now, it's not effective from the from in general for energy consumption perspective, because it's very it's not stable, so I think that we will change it, but the whole society have to agree that it's time to change, because it's not effective, and if we will work such way, the energy, it's like the same like in nature. Nothing happens against you. You don't have possibility to go against the nature. So in the energy market is the same. So I think we have to maybe not exactly what to avoid, but we have to. It's about the same information. We have to share the information between the DSO operators, between the, in general, energy market, and see what happened. And you know, some projects are successful, and some of them are not. But we have, how to say, a possibility to try or learn from other countries, from other DSOs, that, you know, it's not happening in Spain, in, you know, Estonia and Latvia and so on, and we will not go this way.
Mm-hmm. Well, as some smart people are saying, that it is important to make mistakes fast. So when we are thinking about new developments, that we have to not only introduce new mechanisms, but we also have to understand if this mechanism is not going to work, then how to switch it off efficiently and not to drag it too long.
Yeah.
Well, Sandi, perhaps you can tell how in Latvia we are having this situation with net metering system.
Well, I fully agree with colleagues again, and I think we are all in a more or less the same boat. I guess in Finnish is ni maksa, the saying, so the other pays. In Latvian it actually means I don't pay. So it's rather similar, and I guess we should keep it in mind that in a grid there is no ni maksa or I don't pay idea. The grid is like we call it like a Swedish table. So at the end, everybody should cover it somehow, and that is what we are sometimes missing. That okay, well, I will not pay, somebody else pay. So this is no way. We just can talk about how we split it and how we cover, and of course everybody is welcome to challenge us as a grid if we are efficient, if we are good enough, and etc. But we should remember that the costs somehow we should cover. Another thing is that what we shouldn't, how to say, or we should avoid, we had a huge pressure last year that the grid has no capacity. Well, actually, we have gave out 2 times more, or together with TSO, 5 times more the connection possibilities to produce 5 times more as needed for country electricity. And if somebody says that the grid is not big enough, then it's a question: well, do we need 10 times or 15 times? And every investment would put again pressure on our tariffs and etc. So we should be rather pragmatic. We should explain the situation. Of course, we should act very fast about some kind of movements. And I guess in Latvia case we were fast, but we could be faster as well of introducing this grid connection fees that there is, let's say, just serious players get to the connection to the grid and build the solar parks and wind parks. But yes, we should be in some kind let's say, we should keep our vision and maybe not jump after every single question that, okay, let's increase the capacity, let's increase it. But at the end we should understand that the future is coming, and we should adapt accordingly.
Well, so from my consumer's perspective, I hear is that regardless of the country where I would choose to live, I have to accept that there might be some changes in the way how I pay for my services. And if I am enjoying some kind of subsidy mechanism, then I have to understand that this mechanism most probably is not till the end of time, but that these subsidy mechanisms could be concluded, ended at some point of time.
Zintas, maybe I can a bit argue with Michael about this netto metering system. I forgot, you know, but yeah, of course, from grid perspective, it's nonsense, and somebody should pay it. But from terms of electricity, how to say, introduction and that the green producers coming into market, perhaps that was a right decision to do it. But we should have, let's say, guts as well to say that that's enough, and we should stop it in some way, you know, because it's if everybody will do like that, then there will be, let's say, no way.
Okay, good. What are you, as CEOs of DSOs, expecting from me as a household customer? What do you expect? What I should do do I have to like wait when you will call me, or is there something that I have to plan ahead for I don't know, in the next 3 years, so that we would have a good cooperation? So on this, how would you see it?
Choose flexible this tariff, so we will not have problems with peaks and downs and etc. So you will take flexibility in your account and wash your dishes when there is enough electricity in the market.
Okay, so you want me to be the one who is following the prices and scrolling down the Nord Pool spot prices. How about in Estonia?
Yeah, I would definitely love that too. And maybe one thing more is that from you as a customer, I would like to get your feedback and feedback in your everyday life. What is something that we could do? What are you missing in your life? So this is something I would really love to have, because then I know that what kind of things I need to develop in the grid. And also something, well, we have lots of rural areas in Estonia where the connection quality is up to the standard, but it is still not as good as it could be. So the standard in Estonia says that during summertime it is okay if 12 hours there is no electricity. The outage can be 12 hours long. During winter time the outage can be 16 hours long. And I want you as a customer to be ready for that it will happen. At one point you will not have electricity, and please be alive during that time.
Well, thank you. Well, I do not like this perspective that you're saying that electricity will not be available for 16 hours, but I do accept that I can write some internet comments on how you are working. I think that this is an approach that many of customers in Latvia at least enjoy. How about in Estonia?
Yeah.
Well, it's Lithuania.
Okay. Actually, in few words, to be active user, it's, you know, in general, because when we're talking about a consumer or customer, we don't have average customer. Every type of customer is different from each other. If we're talking about microgenerators, they have their own expectations from the DSO. You know, the simple user who are living, who lives somewhere in the forest, you know, he maybe or she expect that outage will not, how to say, the duration will be not more than 12 hours or so we have different type of customers. But in general, I think that, you know, the customers will be active when we have the same markets, the banks, the telecommunications, when customers became active, when these services are services and price for the service is important for them. I think that, you know, maybe it's a bad example, but when the prices increases, so then customers, how to say, looked what happened in energy markets. So I think that the active customer from customer perspective, because, you know, it's you can bring horse to the river, but you can force them to drink the water, you know. So we could do everything from network perspective, but if customers will be passive, and I don't know how the other countries we will talk about that, but they still are passive from our perspective, because when we're talking about the dramatically increase of generators and so on, we're still talking about 10,000, 20,000, I don't know, 50,000, and we have 1.6 or 1.8 million of users. So it means that, you know, when we look into this group, it could be dramatic, but in general, it's only a few persons of all users.
Mm-hmm. Also, what I hear is that for this path of climate neutrality, users will have to become active users. And unfortunately, till someone will solve my problems in my place with the service where I will pay for some flexibility mechanisms. Unfortunately, I will have to do all the work in the next 5 years. So I will have to scroll down the prices. I will have to speak with my wife about when to wash the dishes or when to turn on the machine, and I will have to think when to weld some kind of metal pipes.
And actually, the market going this way, because we already, I saw a few years ago that we have a washing machine who is, checking the energy prices from the spot market and turning on when the prices are low. Yeah. So in general, market is helping customer to be active.
Yeah, but for me to understand that climate neutrality actually means that I will have to pay more attention to electricity consumption, and my everyday pattern, everyday actions will depend not only on when I want to do something or when it is convenient for me, but also how does it affect the whole system. Good. Well, we have had a great discussion so far. The last question I would like to ask each and every one of you, beginning with you, what would be your personal ambition for the next 3-5 years that you would like to achieve as a CEO of National DSO in order for all of Lithuanians to have better starting position for this path?
When I talk with my team, I'm always saying that we will work in that way to have to write something in our CV or to talk with grown children, after 20 or 30 years. So in Lithuania now we have a few big projects, and I'm pretty sure that we will have the big impact on Lithuania energy market. Is now we are deploying the smart meter project, and I think the next week we will have around 25% of all Lithuania covered by new generation smart meters, and it's a huge huge impact and huge thing for Lithuania people. Another part is the regulation. We are maybe the last country who moved to this project, to this process, and all the customers will be deregulated and will buy energy from independent suppliers. The second part is the same digitalization, open data, and network management. I think that my team work, we will do everything what need to be done to have the shortages, the time without electricity shorter, and it will be what to remember in old days.
Well, I wish you luck with all the challenging projects. How about you, Mikhail?
I do hope that I can find the money to invest in making the grid resilient, because we know the climate is changing. We will have more storms. They will be bigger. I hope that we can make up the right rules and regulations and also the investments to facilitate the uptake of electric vehicles. And most importantly, I do hope that I can make that kind of change that in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, when our customers think of us as a company, then they have a smile on their face and they are thinking, wow, these are the good guys.
Great. Small ambition, 200 million a year and a smile on the face. Sandis, what are your personal ambitions?
Well, difficult to add because the most of ambitions were on the table already. But I guess the one thing is that we should be ready in next 5 years to handle all this, let's say, green energy everywhere produced, micro and etc. And this is such a technical challenge which we should handle. Another thing that the DSOs should be the frontiers, not the anchors for a green transition. For that we should be, let's say, no business or no household should wait for the grid improvements or building a grid in order to get greener or to connect something to the grid or increase the capacity. That I guess it's a big challenge. And I fully agree that with Michael that in a 5 years time that if somebody hears in Latvia DSO name, they say that those are the good guys, and I as a customer feel safe, feel well treated, and my let's say supplier is honest and open let's say company.
Very good. I would like to thank you for this great discussion. Pārējot vai kopsavalkot šo diskusiju latviešu valodā, jāsaka, ka tātad man kā parastam lietotājam, kas ir sagaidām šajā ceļā uz klimata neutralitāti, jārēķinās, ka cenas svārstīsies, diemžēl mani paradumi būs jāmaina atkarībā no tā, kādas ir tīkla iespējas, kādas būs cenas. Man ir jārēķinās, ka parādīsies arvien vairāk un vairāk jauni pakalpojumu sniedzēji, kuri visticamāk vēlēsies mani aktīvi uzrunāt, lai apkalpotu man un ļautu man darīt mazāk nekā šobrīd kungi vēlas, lai es darītu. Tātad paldies par klausīšanos un tad vārds noslēdzošajiem vārdiem.
Mūsu paneļa diskusijas dalībniekiem, dāmas un kungi, aplausi arī Dzintaram Kauliņam par diskusijas moderēšanu. Paldies, Dzintar! Ar šo jaudīgo diskusiju mēs esam noslēguši 3. AC/DC Tech pasākumu. Šeit gan vienam nav šaubu, ka šis pasākums ir izkarojis vietu kā viens no nozīmīgākajiem enerģētikas nozares pasākumiem gada griezumā. Un darbs, protams, fórumam noslēdzoties nebeidzās. Šis ir tikai sākums jaunām diskusijām, jaunām sarunām, kas cerams šaurākā lokā lēmumu pieņēmējiem varēs noderēt nākotnē. Un lai mēs visi kopīgi atgriežoties pie sākotnējā novēlējuma konferences sākumā varētu veidot ilgtspējīgu un pārtikušu nākotni gan sev, gan mūsu nākamajām paudzēm. Dārgie tiešraidžu skatītāji, mans vārds ir Arts Ozoliņš, un ar jums mēs tiekamies citā vietā un citā laikā. Visu labu!